went to basic, my parents had a bet. My dad bet that I wasn't going to make it through basic. So when I graduated, they're sitting there changing money. What are you guys doing? I'm like, oh, well, your dad bet that there's no way you'd make it. And I always knew that the military was something that I wanted to do. But once I made that decision, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. I have to apply myself. The enemy here doesn't give a shit how much firepower you're bringing. Those Bradleys, there's some tanks out there too. They don't care. They're going to fight, and they did. There was a mission we went on where we lost one guy, got shot through the road. So we put him in an ambulance vehicle at 113, and as we were going off, they blew that thing up because IDs at that point in time were just blowing through everything. The vehicle I was in picked it up, and there's some pictures that picked this vehicle up, launched it 50 meters down the road, and it's like facing the wrong way. You can't even tell what it is. Killed the driver immediately. Killed the JTAC sitting next to me immediately. The captain it broke his back. He was stuck in the vehicle. And then me and the junior engineer got seriously wounded in that. I broke through the gunner's display with my face, destroyed my face, and then fixed my nose. It took years to rebuild this upper jaw. I didn't have teeth for like 4 years, and had to relearn how to walk properly again. Crushed a bunch of ribs. And we went to Afghanistan. Come back on medevac bird. I got shot 3 times. There's helmet cam footage. You can Google Chuck Ritter shot. Huge ambush. This Afghan that's in front of me, he gets shot. His fingers get shot off. He gets shot through the leg. I'm right at this corner, so I'm returning fire, but there's so much fire coming, I just duck back a little bit. And every time I'm trying to engage, it's just a massive amount of fire. I go to engage this guy, and I'm off. I'm shooting a little bit to the left of where I think he's at. So he transitions to me, and then his first round strikes me in the leg, right here on the side. It knocks me forward, but as I'm falling, a round hit me in my upper back here, the shoulder, PKM round.
Hey, Zulu's hit, high chest wound. Hey, I need people at my position right now. Zulu is down. He is urgent.
I saw you were referred to as a bullet magnet.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He was an Army Special Forces Sergeant Major with 27 years of service, the Deputy Commandant for the U.S. Army's JFK Special Warfare Center. He's a Green Beret and spent 18 years in the 3rd Special Forces Group, 17 deployments, which is hard to wrap my mind around, and probably the most of any guest I've had on here, I think. Multiple awards and commendations. He's the founder of Objective Arete, geared towards self-evaluation and development. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the best shit talkers on X I've probably seen, and a big part of why he's on the show. Welcome to the stage, Chuck Ritter.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, man.
Thanks for coming.
Pulled this off.
Yeah, like I said, I've followed you and seen you on Twitter, X, whatever, for a while, and just really liked a lot of the stuff that you put out, and thought it'd be an entertaining episode, in conjunction with obviously having a shit ton of experience within Army Special Operations. And I tend to have quite a few SEALs on here, obviously, and so anytime I can get that's thunder, if you can hear that on the maybe we can clean it up in post. I don't know, maybe not, but if not, then that was thunder. But yeah, I love having Army guys on, because one of my best friends growing up ended up as a Ranger, and then to CAG after that, and I've just always had a ton of reverence and respect for Army Special Operations guys. So anytime I can get a solid, salty, experienced dude on here, I like to do it. Instead of getting right into the lightning round like I normally would, I know you brought kind of a swag bag, and I have some stuff for you that we wanted to start the episode with. Usually we do it at the end, and nobody sees it because most people have turned it off by then. So so I'd like to start with it, and I know you've got a surveillance or counter-surveillance bag that you wanted to go over some equipment with first, and then do the kind of presentation after. So I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, so I got 2 things. I got the swag bag for you, right? But for that to make sense, we got to go through this first. And this is really kind of like an educational piece for people, because I think, everybody knows it's important to have a little counter-surveillance bag, right? And I got to have some things in here, because one of them actually goes into the swag bag for you.
Oh, all right.
I made a video about this. If you go to my YouTube, there's a video of it. But when you go through this bag, there's all kinds of important stuff. Like, my ex is, I do talk a lot of smack, but it's very positive. It's a positive potato, right? Life was all out of lemons, so here's a positive potato instead, right? some random stuff, some dice. It's always important to have a poker chip, small cow. This looks like it'd be worthless, a small pan, but it's actually come in handy quite a few times, right?
So you keep this on you all the time?
All the time, just in case, like, everybody knows it's important to have rubber chicken. This has actually been all around the world. I got pictures of this in Rome, in combat theaters.
Oh, shit.
It's it doesn't work that well.
Has it been in the Vatican?
Yeah. No one in the Vatican, unfortunately. You got to replace it about every 5 years. It's a little overdue, but,
Mustaches.
So this is actually the backup mustaches. It's a counter-surveillance kit. Yeah. So, you got a tail on you, you throw one on.
Yeah. Are you into the furry thing?
No, not yet. But I'm retiring, so I got 2 more. I'm terminal leave now.
Well, nowadays you don't have. You can be active duty and post that shit on the internet.
Yeah, but I think that's still frowned upon. I think that. I think if that's what you're into and you come out with that, you're probably P&G.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that works.
Maybe still in soft, but I don't know about the regular milk.
But if you're wearing one of these, nobody's not going to know who you are anyway, right?
Emergency.
So this is the actual primary mustache kit, right?
So you got a primary and a backup.
Yeah, emergency beard kit, right?
I could fill mine in a little bit, maybe.
Say you think you have a tail, so you're going to do your counter surveillance route, right? What I do, instead of like doing the normal stops, I'll just get out, I'll throw the beard on there, like, shit, that's the wrong dude, right? Like,
it looks pretty realistic too.
This, I don't really know what this is, but it's just a good load signal if you're going to do a meet, right? Like you put that out and they see that, they know that it's safe to come talk to you. This is always good to have. It's an emergency clown nose.
Oh yeah.
Especially good, like, hey man, like right now you're just kind of being a clown. So. But here's the most important pieces why we got to get through this first. So I don't know if you've seen some of my posts about Mr. Safety Wiener, right? But you got safety's important. These are signed. It says Chuck Ritter on here. If you actually go to www.chuckritter.com, like safety cards, all this stuff is on there for sale. But so I was making these posts on Twitter about, I forgot, somebody was saying something stupid. So I was talking. Oh no, it was the tampon debate. Like, hey, you should plug gunshot wounds with tampons, right? And I'm like, it's a ridiculous thing. Like, no, just put some Kerlix in there, tourniquets. But I was like, no, what you can do is you keep a pack of hot dogs. You shove a hot dog in there, you cut it off, sandpaper it down, throw some super glue on there, and you're good to go, right? And I got death threats for those too. Like, you shouldn't be telling people. I was like, look, man, if you find yourself in a situation where you're shoving a hot dog, or your friend is, like, you're lucky you made it this far, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so since I'm a sergeant major, and we're supposed to be about like safety and all that stuff. We got the safety vests, because now it's a safe wiener, right? And you put the helmet on there, and now it's a really safe wiener because it's important to keep your wiener safe, right? So, but I'll post these. I'm like, Mr. Safety Wiener disagrees with your post, right? Because people try to troll me all the time, and they get very mad. I just post steak sandwiches or Mr. Safety Wiener. But it was funny. I was posting all these things about wieners, and then it was like 3 days later, all the news articles came out about how North Korea had banned hot dogs in their country. I'm like, so you guys think I'm just messing around, but I'm actually out here fighting World War III.
Yeah.
So
is that your welcome aboard speech to when you were the sergeant major?
No, I had to be a little bit more professional. I got that like after the first week. Like, all right, guys, let's talk about that goes into the swag bag we got here, right?
I love the bag. I wish I.
So you got a suite. So it's Objective Arete. So,
Arete.
So everybody says arete because that is the word too, but it's Arete is an old Greek word.
Oh, okay.
About virtuous. You got a sweet Objective Arete hat. You got your own safety vest. This wiener goes in here, so now you can.
All right.
Now you can have your own Mr. Safety Wiener hat. A signed shopping cart, right? Yeah. That was another thing, a post on X that had me with a ton of death threats. It's like, hey guys, like, I'm not going to judge you if you don't put your shopping cart. I just want to know, like, for those of you who don't, like, why do you do it? Like, and then that created this. It went viral. There was like 600,000 views in a day, and people were like, you shouldn't be telling people to. I was like, I'm just asking a question. Like, I'm not. I was like, I've had shopping carts hit my car and ding it up. I'm like, okay, if you're not going to put it back, cool. Why not put it at least in the grass or something? Right?
I think it's a good metric for character for sure, because obviously it's not illegal to not put it back, but it says a lot about you if you don't. I think
it's just a simple thing. And you got this. You got your own. Handmade by a sergeant major.
Safety wrist or safety bracelet. All right.
Bracelet, yeah.
Probably have to rock this for the show then.
And then you got some cool stuff. You got my old team as a team sergeant on. You got the 3335.
Oh, cool.
Patch, and you got 3rd group flash. I wore this for many, many years.
Holy shit, that's awesome.
It's actually from the Beret. And then there's not that many of these left. This is our coin from Operational Detachment Alpha 3335. The team actually replaced it with a much cooler coin, but I don't have any extra of those. But this was one of the original ones that the team made. So they made these about 20 years ago, maybe longer than that. Yeah. And I only had 3 left. So this is one of those. Shit, and then you got some other stickers and stuff in there. So,
man, thank you very much. That as fun as the gags are, the coin and flash are incredibly humbling to get. Thank you very much. I do have. Normally, it's the parting gift that we'll give at the end of the show, but since you just gifted me something, I'll kick it off with that.
Yeah.
Just a show coin, which.
Nice.
Has a good quote on it that I like, and
sweet.
I don't know if in North Carolina you do any boot scooting or line dancing, but
nice.
Yeah, custom mic drop belt buckle for commemorating your time on the show, which to me is it's different than a coin, but kind of has a similar.
That's really badass.
Yeah, it has kind of a similar feel to it. So yeah, I appreciate you coming on and driving all the way here and taking the time. So.
I appreciate the belt buckle. So on the team, that the coin I gave you, one of the rites of passage was the indoctrination period, where the first 3 months as a new guy, you couldn't call anybody by their first name. We gave you a bunch of books you had to learn, and then you had to take the team physical fitness standards, which took a week, and then you're off probation. But you weren't fully off probation until the 6-month mark, and you went to a whole board of your peers, and they told you, hey, you either made it or you didn't, but if you made it, you got the team belt buckle.
Oh, no shit.
So that was always like a big thing, and that belt buckle could be taken away at any point in time.
Oh,
so that was just kind of make a culture of like, hey,
yeah,
you want to be here because you want to excel, right? So that's
and that was at 3rd group?
Yeah, it was a 3rd group.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that.
That was just our team philosophy. But I might start line dancing because my next job, I'm going to be while I'm pursuing my master's, I'm going to be the general manager at Hatchet Brewing Company there.
Oh, no shit.
Which I do have. I didn't bring it in here, but I brought some. I don't know if you're a beer drinker, you can give it away. Some awesome Hatchet Brewing Company beers.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to try it. I don't really drink a whole lot, but I would damn sure love to try it, and I'm sure.
I was actually going to bring them in here, but
yeah. Oh, great shit.
So maybe we do line dancing, though, I guess, like once a month there.
Yeah,
so.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Hey guys, I want to take a minute to tell you about the Mic Drop Patreon, where you can get the real mic drop experience the way it's meant to be seen. You get completely uncensored, unfiltered, and uncut episodes with nothing held back, just raw, real conversations directly from me to you, without YouTube censorship. Plus, you'll see it days before anyone else, with early premieres and exclusive bonus content that you won't find anywhere else. You get behind-the-scenes access to the show, including pre- and post-show footage, with me and the guest both in studio and on location, depending on what the guest is into and what we have going on. On top of that, we've got tons of Patreon-only perks, mic drop swag, access to exclusive merch, and the chance to submit your questions to be asked at the end of every episode. You'll also get a sneak peek at our upcoming guests, so you'll know who's in the studio weeks before anyone else. We're constantly releasing new features and dropping new content based on what you want to see. For our top-tier members, you get the same mic drop challenge coin that all of my guests receive from the upcoming show, which will never, ever be for sale. We've got quarterly merch that's sent out directly to you, a monthly Zoom call with me where we talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, and an active group chat where we all shoot the shit on a daily basis. All of that for just a few bucks a month to support the show. Right now, we're also offering a 10% discount off an annual subscription, which means that you get more than a free month. I want to say thank you to everyone who has already signed up. Your support means that we get to keep bringing you the content that you love. So if you haven't yet, hit the link in the description or go to patreon.com/micdrop and join the team. I'll see you guys in there. Thank you.
Team Dog, premium meals designed to keep your dog healthy, happy, and strong, to improve digestion, boost energy, and support a shiny coat. Non-GMO ingredients, no fillers, no gluten, no corn, no seed oils, and no soy. Just pure, high-quality ingredients to fuel your dog's best life. It was crafted by experts, made for your dog, Navy SEAL K-9 trainer, and nutritionists. Team Dog Food, where no piece goes to waste.
What's the last full book that you read?
The last full book, oddly enough, I'd never read Gates of Fire before. I don't know if you read that by Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah, but it was probably at least 20 years ago.
About Thermopylae and people.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'm gonna read this book, which was awesome. But then I had a bunch of dreams about being a Spartan for like 2 weeks after that. But prior to that, a really cool book I read, it was Undaunted Courage, about the Lewis and Clark exploration. You ever read that?
Yeah, by Stephen Ambrose, right?
Yeah. Such a cool, and I think there's a lot of gold in that book, right? It's from the perspective of kind of Meriwether Lewis. But if you look at it, I think all of us can take this lesson of, hey, never rest on your laurels, because he did this awesome thing. He was taught under the president, under some of the greatest minds of the time, did this amazing thing, was extremely talented. They're out there like doing longitude and latitude off the stars and devices, things that I could never do. But then he comes back and he's basically a failure because he did this great thing, but instead of adapting, and he was a governor and then he failed, and he ended up committing suicide. Right? That can be debated whether he committed suicide or not. But he died, and he was a failure. He never published the book he was supposed to do because he failed to adapt and realize that, hey, even though I did all this great stuff here, it doesn't matter. I still have to make myself of value now. So
it's a great book, and I found myself just imagining how incredible it must have been to be able to see such unfinished parts of the country at that time the way that they did. I mean, also dangerous as fuck.
The black bears in there, you're like, that's terrifying, those stories, right?
Yeah, but man, it's such an amazing story. What's something you wish you were better at?
Empathy.
You find yourself cold-hearted?
It's not cold-hearted. I find myself, I'm one of those guys that thinks that I can just mold the world around me, and I fully believe that if you think that you're an unstoppable force of nature in life, that you will be. I fully believe that. Yes, there's many things outside of my control, but I can control what I can control, my mindset, what I'm doing. And I just had my 34th surgery 7 weeks ago from combat-related injuries, and I've been able to recover from those. I'm training for JFK 50 miles. So a lot of times I'm like, no, you just need to think differently, or like, why are you complaining about this? But the reality is, everybody's going through something different, and not everybody has the same experiences. So a lot of times I have to remind myself, like, I need to take a step back and really feel what this person's feeling or what they're going through, instead of just, hey, stop. I can't just be like, don't be a pussy, right? Because it's not a real thing. People have all, and there's times when you're in an emotional state that you can't quite control where you're at. And I've been there, and even though I've been there, sometimes I struggle with taking a step back and really trying to put myself in that person's seat.
Yeah.
So it's something I'm aware of, but I still I got a lot of work on it. To do on it.
It's tough. Are you a parent, or would you rather not get into that? Yeah. I mean, to me, that's whether you're training people or you're a parent, or, one of the neat things I think about dog training is it forces you to do that, to really be successful at it, because you can't explain anything to them. The parallels between kids and dogs is very consistent the younger the kids are. The older they get, the less kind of simple association they are. You can explain things to them. They start to develop some logic and reason, not a lot, but, but knowing like, hey, we don't speak the same language. Everything is based off of interaction, and A plus B equals C. It kind of forces you to always think, okay, how does he perceive what's going on? Like, I know what I'm trying to accomplish with him. He has no idea. So how do I get him to understand?
Never thought of it like that. Yeah. So you have to just like put yourself in the dog's shoes
all the time. Yeah, I mean, to be successful, I think you do, because it's like, especially when you run into problems, and that's, if I had to pinpoint or single out the kind of crux of what dog training is it's problem solving. Because yes, there are principles and fundamentals that are pretty consistent, dog to dog, breed to breed, et cetera. Even training regimen to train, whether you're training, a dog basic obedience to not knock grandma over, or, using a laser to direct an explosive detection dog to check a door seam before entry, and everything in between. The way you get from point A to point B is generally the same. Having said that, all dogs are different. Their perception of everything can be wildly different, and so even though, again, I know what I'm trying to accomplish, I know what I think the environment is or what the training scenario looks like, you always have to imagine it from their perspective.
Do you find yourself lacking empathy when you're doing that sometimes too?
No.
Like, wait a minute.
No, not at all. I would say, 20 years ago, I didn't have a ton. But, the more I got into dog training and just the longer I was a parent, the more I learned the hard way, especially as a father, that empathy is crucial, and I think for me, my biggest struggle, not to make this interview about me and my parenting experiences, but I spent 12 years in the SEAL teams, and my last 3.5 were as an instructor, as a SEAL, a BUDS instructor, where you're just dropping the hammer. And, when I say do this, you fucking do it like there's a firecracker in your ass. And, and you're dealing with, young men who are highly motivated to do a very extreme, specific, dangerous thing. And then you go to dealing with toddler girls. And it's like there's such a polar opposite there. And I found it difficult not to have that same, like, hey, I told you to do this, why aren't you tripping over your feet to go do it?
Making a hell week for you.
Yeah, and learn the hard way. I mean, I definitely made plenty of mistakes when they were younger, and still do. But I think that seeing the impact that not having empathy had, was a very stark and sobering reminder of how important it was. But also with dogs, when you see a dog that's cracking under pressure because you're putting too much on them, or even ruining a dog because it's a young prospect for police or military work, and you apply too much pressure and you think they're ready to handle something that they're not, and you just kind of keep going. It's that typical like AA personality, like just push harder and fucking stop being a pussy, and and I've ruined good dogs, not being empathetic to how they're perceiving it. So I'm right there with you. I mean, that stuff is crucial.
I think you got to have empathy sometimes for your own body. Like when you're training, difficult, you're like, wait a minute, I'm going a little bit too hard here. And I need to give, my calves or whatever a rest. Yeah. Right. Because we don't control that part. But hey, I got a quick question for you. We're talking about BUDS and stuff, right? So you've written 3 books. Yeah. Right. And as a SEAL, right? Everybody was like, SEALs have all these books. But all your books are about dogs. Right? You don't. Well, you don't have one book that's about like how badass you are.
No. So it's actually technically 4. Although.
Oh yeah, you got Fuck America too.
Yeah. So the first book, Trident Canine Warriors, and I will say, it came out in early 2013, which was before a lot of books had been written. I mean, there were a few out, but not to say that I was like the first guy, but there wasn't quite the inundation. Navy SEAL Dogs is the young adult adaptation of that. It was a scholastic, school kids program. So it's the same book. It's just adapted for younger readers. And then Team Dog is basically principles and fundamentals of training dogs. And it's a very just dog training heavy book. I do use some stories or examples from experiences that I've had, either handling my own dogs, training them for whatever application, or even stories from operational dogs if they apply or whatever. And then Unfuck America was years later. It was kind of right at the start of the COVID shutdown. Both my kids were in high school. They were home. Everything was shut down. A lot of my travel had ceased for all the same reasons that most people did. And so instead of just door dashing and hanging out on Netflix all day, I was like, what can I do that is at least productive and whatever. And there was actually an opportunity from another major publisher to do that same book. So it actually wasn't even my idea. They asked me if I would consider doing it after I'd been doing the show for several years, and I'd had a lot of subject matter experts for pretty hotbed political topics, whether it's the border, guns, abortion, you name it. And so they were like, hey, you've had all these experts and you've got some, unique perspectives through them or whatever, would you consider doing a book that kind of highlights all of the hotbed political topics going on? And I was like, well, fuck, if you guys are asking me to do it, obviously you've done enough research to think it's a good idea. But my concern was, a major publisher like that, as kind of raw and unfiltered as this show is, my assumption, maybe it was incorrect, but that they would want to kind of scrub a lot of it and be really heavy on kind of the creative control. And I thought, especially for topics like that, I didn't think that was a good mix. So I was like, I'll just do it myself and self-publish it. But so that's the 4th book. So 3 of them are real dog heavy, and then the one is more, here's what's going on in the country, and here's how I think you could fix it. But it's more kind of.
It is self-published. I didn't realize you self-published. The other ones aren't self-published.
No, the other ones are. So 2 of them are through Macmillan or St. Martin's Press, which is a subsidiary of Macmillan, and then Team Dog was from Penguin. But
but none of them. So do you find yourself, because you haven't written a SEAL book of how badass you are, does that make you P&G in the SEAL community?
Probably. It would be a fucking pamphlet if I was writing a book about how badass I am. So you
just make stuff up. I feel like if you're, the special operations grift is you just got to make up.
I would say there's enough other guys who have done that. I don't think anybody else needs to do it. But it is fun. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of books out now. I mean, there's even a number of Delta guys who have written books, which for a long time, they were kind of the last bastion of quiet professionals or whatever. But at this point, even a bunch of them have done books and interviews, and I've had several of them on here. And obviously, I have a different opinion having written books. I think there's a right and a wrong way to do it, and but I do think everybody deserves to tell their own fucking story if they want. Obviously, the potential consequences, depending on how you do it, the blowback or the feedback is going to be what it is, and so you've got to be willing to deal with that if you over embellish or just straight up lie. I mean, which a number of guys have been rolled up doing that. So but there are a lot of them out there. But if time travel were possible, where and when would you go and why?
This is actually something I think about a lot, because even though I'm 46 years old, I'm like a 12-year-old in my head. And there's two places I think I would like to go back. And I'd like to take a full special operations ODA, 4 pallets, and whatever you can put on those pallets, and you go back to the Alamo and see if you can actually make a difference, right? And then whatever goes on there, C-wire, your ammo, whatever kit, you got organic, and maybe also maybe the Battle of Thermopylae. Like, could you go back there and really, if you're facing hundreds of thousands of people, because that's something that we've never faced hundreds of thousands of people on the battlefield, would you even have enough ammo to do that? So if I go back in time, I'd go back to the Alamo for one, just because I grew up in Texas too. So it's one of those stories that's near and dear to my heart. And then probably
If you love talk radio, podcasts, and news, the C. Crane CC Radio 3 delivers exceptional spoken word audio. With separate bass and treble controls, you can tune the sound exactly how you like it, and the clarity makes it feel like your favorite host is right there in the room. C. Crane is a returning sponsor on the podcast. Previously, they sent me their Skywave SSB2 to try out, and now that they've sent their new CC Radio 3 over, I can tell you for sure that it's awesome. The CC Radio 3 pulls in long-range AM/FM stations with exceptional reception and includes emergency features like NOAA weather and the 2-meter ham band. It's got all the bells and whistles, clock, alarm, line-in, antenna jacks, memory presets, and it runs on the included power cord or a set of batteries for over 170 hours, making C. Crane reliable no matter where you are. And with the Bluetooth included, you can stream new episodes of Mic Drop, just like this one, on the CC Radio 3 through any smartphone or smart speaker. To order the CC Radio 3, call C. Crane's U.S.-based customer service at 800-522-8863 or visit ccrane.com/drop. That's CCRANE.com/drop and use the code DROP, all caps, all one word, at checkout for 10% off orders over $75. I think a full ODA at the Alamo would have lasted about 20 minutes. I think that would have made quick work of that place if they had that. But I am curious similarly about the days of the Spartan warriors at their height. I've also seen a lot of conflicting info as to whether or not. I mean, I know like in the movie and historically they say there was a 1 million-man army, which that's been dispelled.
Yeah.
But even if there is a few 100,000, like at that point, it's almost kind of like what's the difference between 300,000 and 1 million if there's 300 of you? On the same token, I've even seen some dispellings or estimates saying that there was more like 10,000, which again, even then, 300 versus 10,000 is so woefully outnumbered that it's still an impressive feat. But you always have to wonder, like, history is written by the victor typically, and what stories weren't told, how accurate are they, how much has it. I mean, you look at the telephone game in fucking kindergarten, it's like 2,000 years later, you have to assume that.
Right. You don't know, because there was nothing written by the Persians either. If it was written, like, it didn't survive. Yeah. There's not really a Persian narrative about,
Yeah, so who knows, right. Like. Yeah. Do you carry an EDC at home?
So I always carry a sweet knife, right? I always believe in carrying some weapons. Sometimes I've also, I have plenty of guns, but I really enjoy the fact that in America, like I don't have to carry everywhere.
Yeah.
Every time I've been in these countries where you have to carry and you're always like super switched on. I try to be switched on, but I also try to make a conscious effort not to be that switched on weirdo because I think it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like I'll either open carry in the car or whatever. But for like an EDC for myself, like knife, there's always a tourniquet in the car, stuff like that.
Do you have a favorite EDC or a favorite pistol that you carry more often than?
Actually, oddly enough, people make fun of me on this all the time. I'm a Beret guy. Like,
Really?
Yeah. When we switched over to the Glocks on the ODAs, I still carried I carried a Beretta to the end, and people were making fun of me. It's like, hey, when you can outshoot me on the range, like you can run your mouth. And a couple of people could on the team. They got to where they could definitely outshoot me, but I was comfortable with it. Even at the house, I have my go-to. That's my close weapon at night is a 40 caliber Beretta.
Yeah.
And then I have a Model 92 that the team when I left, it's got custom grips with the team logo and everything in the grips and on the slide. But I've got other weapons too. But those are probably my go-tos. And just for like the rifles at the house, it's just iron sights with no optics on them because it's just fast. I feel like I can shoot quickly like that in a closed environment. I'm not trying to take a long shot, so I'm pretty simple.
Yeah.
Like even on a team, I would go out there and spend a couple hours every week just with iron sights, ensuring that I was very comfortable with my fundamentals before I threw everything on there and really train that way. In fact, that was one of the things in our team too. Like, hey, until you can sit down at 25 meters and put 30 rounds, in the zero target in 30 seconds without throwing around, like, you can't really start working with optics. And there's a lot of argument like what you want to work with there. But for us, it was like, hey, be comfortable with this basic stuff first instead of trying to be sexy right up front. But I kind of run with that same mindset.
I like it.
At the house too. So
yeah, I think stick with what you're comfortable with. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Could it be faster with some hollow sights? I'm sure, but I just know how much time I get to spend training on that because every time I mess with my friends' guns at the range, like it's great. But the way my muscle memory is, it's like, man, now I gotta like have a completely different sight picture, and I just don't want to invest the time. Like, so I'll just sit there and dry fire with my non-Gucci gun.
I'm right there with you. I don't have on any pistols. I don't have any optics other than just night sight, iron sights.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear you 100%.
Yeah, it's kind of like my beater cars, like my Fiat 500 and my little Ford Fiesta. Just simplicity.
You said you have a nice car, right?
Yeah, I have a 2004 Mustang that I put like $70,000 into it. So it's a white Mach 1. It's a manual. I built it for the drag strip, but I also built it to where if I wanted to drive cross country in it, I could.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm about to sell it because I just don't. I don't know.
Have you dragged it? Have you quarter miled it?
Yeah. I used to take it to the drag strip a lot. Since I put a 6-speed in it, and it's probably not the best for drag strip. I wasn't talented enough to really. I think I got it down to I ran it like 10.4. One of my buddies got it in it. He ran it at like 10.2.
It's quick.
It's got a little Kenny bell in there. It's got a nitro system on it. It's got a roll cage in it.
That's awesome.
It's just a cool car. It's fun.
I assume you got pictures of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to throw one of those in the YouTube episode. It'd be cool. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, what's the one? It's a dick in hand is worth two in the bush, or maybe it's a bird in hand. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, oddly enough, lately it's been this Matthew McConaughey quote that I really like. I was like, man, that's legit. Well, I'll give you two, but this one I think he said it on a Modern Wisdom podcast, Chris Williamson, but he said, decide who you want to be and just do the work, right? And I think that everybody's looking for these secrets to success, but the only secret is figure out what it is you want to do and don't be ambiguous about it. And I think a lot of people set these really ambiguous goals that doesn't allow them to, and then get very specific and then just put in the work to get there, do what you want to do, whether that's, being physically fit or being somebody that's smarter or, something where you want to just do the work and grind and eventually you get there, right? And the other one is a Mike Tyson quote. It's discipline is doing something that you hate, but doing it like you love it. I think those kind of go hand in hand, right? Like, just do the work, and the work is going to be unsexy generally, and it's going to take a while. It's going to take longer than you want it to, but eventually if you put the work in and you're doing the right things, right? There's also people confused doing the right thing and then doing that thing right. Right? Don't confuse those two. Yes, you can. If you want to run a marathon, you should train physically every day, probably every at least 6 days a week. But if you're just powerlifting, and it's not. Yeah, you're going to train hard, but you're doing the wrong thing. So
that's great. I think it's probably the biggest misconception of entrepreneurship is just that day-to-day grind, base hit, unsexy, doing shit you don't want to do. Most of the days you don't want to do it, because I think most people, especially with social media being the way that it is, see people and only pay attention to them once they've made it. They don't see the years or decades prior to that.
Right?
Yeah, that just sucked, that you were a nobody, that nobody paid any attention to and nobody gave a shit about, and then you finally get to that point, and then that's when people start paying attention, and then you get the, well, it must be nice, or like the, well, not all of us, can fucking do that, or whatever, and it's like, I think that's where most people fail is, it looks cool and they see it and they're like, well, I want to start my own business. And then they do. And 3 months later, when they're not, 5 million followers on Instagram and making 10 million a year, they're like, fuck, this sucks. And I don't want to keep doing this, so.
People have romanticized the entrepreneurship thing, but even like my business partner with Objective Arete, he's owned Hatchet Brewing Company for 5 years. He's like, man, I always just feel like I'm on the brink of failure. He's like, the amount of time I've had to put into this is astronomical compared to what I had in my head of how this is going to work out.
It's always it always seems like it's going to be simple and easy until you do it, and then man, it is tough. It's
kind of like special operations, right? Everybody's like, oh, you were a Navy SEAL or Green Beret, but okay, let's look at everything that it took to prepare and then do the things to become that, how long that took and how shitty it was and how unfun a lot of that stuff was. And it takes a long time to get there. And then, okay, now you're doing the thing, right? But
it's easy to see a Trident or a Beret and be like, I want to do that, or I want to be that, not knowing the struggle that it takes to get to that point. What's something that you've always wanted to do but haven't done yet?
Fly a helicopter.
Really?
Yeah. And luckily there's an airport like 2 miles from my house now for rotary wing classes. I know it's going to be difficult, cool. But when I joined the Army, originally I was like, man, I want to join and be a helicopter pilot. But then my dumb ass, I failed the first drug test for the military when I went into MEPS. I did that on purpose. That's a different story. But then when I finally got my shit together in life and I joined the Army, they're like, you can't be a helicopter pilot because your vision's too bad. My vision was like 2,400 or something of it. I had LASIK now, obviously, because of the thing. So I couldn't do that. And plus you already failed a drug test. So you're not going to be a helicopter pilot. I was like, okay, well, I'll go infantry, right? That's what I did. But my son right now, he just finished ground school and he's in Air Force JROTC. Oh, so cool. He's going to go do his pilot's license. But it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I think I'm just going to execute.
That's awesome.
I'll be fully out of the military. And 1 July is my freedom day. I think I'll dedicate some time, and I still got my GI Bill and stuff, so I can still.
Are you on terminal leave now? Yeah. That's good shit, man. You're originally from here, or Arlington, the Dallas area. What was growing up? We're the same age. What was growing up in the Dallas area back in the 80s like?
So I think I was between 5 and 9 is when we lived up in the Mansfield area. And we lived pretty close to Six Flags and Wet and Wild. So it was cool because I was in this summer camp thing where once every 2 weeks you went to those two things, and awesome area. Both my parents were in the Air Force. So we were here because my mom was still working somewhere. No, was she working somewhere? Or was it my dad? One of them was working somewhere locally. And then what's the closest Air Force base to here?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I should know, but I don't.
Yeah. So so they were working. I forgot. It's right. I can picture where it's at. But anyway, I don't even know if it's open anymore. Anyway, so we were there, and then when he fully retired, then we moved down to Lufkin, Texas. But I was what gets me about Texas, or what I always forget about, is how hot it gets here in the summertime.
It's brutal. Yeah, especially down in Lufkin. It's even worse down there.
That's pretty close to JROTC, so you get that. Yeah. I think that just the proximity. I think that everybody's like, no. I think no. It's a big Army training base, right? That's where you go and do all your big maneuver exercises. Usually, if you're infantry, and I think that they somehow purposely made this contract with God that between the weather and the mosquitoes and the poison ivy, it's gonna
good test.
Yeah.
Did you play sports growing up?
No. So actually, I was talking to your producer back there beforehand. I was the most uncoordinated. I was kickball, I couldn't even kick the ball, the most uncoordinated person. Somehow I was pretty good at wrestling. I was okay at boxing. But yeah, the most uncoordinated person, like, tripping over your own shoes, and couldn't figure out how to use my body properly. So
was it just like, did you kind of grow into your body as you got older, or were you?
No, never. In fact, I feel like I have to put 3 or 4 times as much effort into just being coordinated and doing physical stuff than most people, just to make an adaptation. Just because I don't know. I was premature. I'm just an idiot, but I was like this fat kid. I'll give you my basic training photo. I look like Peter Griffin. I got some glasses on. I'm just fat.
Private Pile.
Yeah. When I went to basic, my parents had a bet. I didn't know about the bet, but my dad bet that I wasn't going to make it through basic. So when I graduated, they're sitting there changing money. I'm like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, oh, well, your dad bet that there's no way you'd make it. And my first PT test in basic training was abysmal. Like at the time we had the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test. You could score a max of 300 points, but you had to score a 180 to pass. 180 was the minimum standard to just be considered fit for the Army. I scored like a 93 or 94 points at 180. It was pretty good.
But you made it.
Made it, yeah. And then my first couple of years in the Army as an infantryman, like, it was pretty interesting. Like, luckily, I had some leaders that they truly invested in this lost cause. And I was taking a PT test once a week for a while there. And
well, I mean, was it all just PT test related, or did you struggle in other areas?
I've always struggled. So I've cognitively too. So I've got some learning disabilities where my parents spent a ton of money on, like, Sylvan Learning Center, and then I was really bad in school. I'm not sure I ever actually passed a class. A lot of summer school. In fact, I went to a special school that was made for people that are coming out of like juvenile hall or pregnant teens, where you went like 20 hours a week, and I was just fucking off there too. So I've had to actually find ways to learn properly, which it takes me longer to learn concepts. It's tougher for me, but because the way I have to learn it, it's almost like I become obsessive. It's like, why are you becoming obsessed about this thing? Like, I'm not, I have to do it this way in order to learn it. But once I do learn it, I usually learn it at a much deeper level than other people, because I've had to break it completely apart and fully understand it in this way. So it didn't help when I got blown up in 2008, and it took 4 years to rebuild my face from here down. A lot of brain damage from there. That also created some issues where I've had to go to cognitive therapy, so it didn't help my learning issues at all either. But yeah, between I was like super uncoordinated and super not academically intelligent either. So
wow. So what was the catalyst growing up to make you decide that you wanted to join the military?
So when I failed that first drug test for the military, I was such a bad kid that my parents were going out of town. When they went out of town, they made me stay in this fifth wheel camper outside the house. But they went out of town. Of course, we found an open window. My friend found it. We got in the house with this huge party, and this epic party. Like, they had three frozen salmon in this freezer, and there's pictures from that night where, like, it's me and a bunch of girls in a hot tub with a salmon, or like I got a fishing pole, I'm fishing out of the toilet, and the salmon's partying with us all night. Salmon ended up outside in the yard. I went out and found it, washed it off, put it back in the freezer. My dad actually cooked it for a local official like the next week. It was didn't go over too well. But anyway, that Sunday, I'm cleaning up this house, and this recruiter, I get a knock on the door, and I'm like, in my underwear and a shirt, all hungover, and of course my friends weren't helping me clean up. And it's this recruiter on a Sunday, and he's like, "Hey man, you've been telling me for a while that you wanted to join the Army, and the recruiting station was right next to this Radio Shack that I was working at." I was like, "That's true." He's like, "Well, I went to your school." He's like, "I've got your transcripts and I've got your high school diploma. You've graduated. All you got to do is go to MEPS with me in the morning, right?" And what he didn't know at that point in time is I just gotten fired from Radio Shack, because I ran a $70,000 credit card fraud scheme there. I got in trouble for that. Luckily, I didn't go to jail for that. They got what they needed back, and it was taken care of. But so I went to MEPS with him the next day. But before I went to MEPS, when he left, I called one of my friends up. I was like, "Hey man, I need you to bring over all the weed you got right now." Why? I was like, "Man, I got a drug test I got to take tomorrow." He's like, "So you don't want to pass the drug test?" I'm like, "No." Doesn't make any sense. I'm like, "Yeah, it makes sense if you don't think about it. Get over here." So went to MEPS. It was like later that week or the week after, the recruiter calls like, "Hey, you can't join, right? Like, you failed the drug test." But I had my high school diploma and my transcript, so I got what I wanted. I was like, "Oh, that sucks, right?" And then
game in the system.
What's that?
Always game in the system.
So I got kicked out of my house, and then I had to move to Alaska with my sister for a while. My mom was sleeping with a gun in her pillow, not because I was like this dangerous person, but she just didn't trust me and my friends. And And then I was going to college. Came back, I was going to college, had a free ride because my mom was a teacher there as a nurse. And I failed bowling class. So with some other classes, right? But I was like, man, if my dumb ass just failed bowling class, like I got to do something that's legit. I got to get out of here and I got to get my shit straight because I'm going to end up just a complete loser. I'm not doing well. At one point, I'd skipped like 100 days of school over like between like normal school and summer school. And it was just, I was like, I have to do something. And went and talked to the recruiter. And because I failed that drug test, I had to get letters from congressmen, letters from local officials, and all these things saying that, hey, I'm a changed man. And went to basic training as an infantryman. Came out.
How old were you when you went in?
I was 19.
Okay.
Yes.
So you did 3 years as an infantryman. At what point did you, well, I guess taking one further step back, was there a point in childhood where you kind of decided or something inspired you to actually join the military? Or was it just more of a path of least resistance through poor life decisions that you've kind of found yourself as that's my option?
Kind of both. I was always obsessed with the military, like every military game. I would sit there and actually handwrite out like everything about all your Russian equipment and everything. Like I had everything memorized. I could tell you about every aircraft, every tank in the U.S. inventory or in some kind of like threat inventory there was. I knew everything about it. And I was always just obsessed with like strategy games. So it's not, even though I was poor academically, I was still an intelligent kid. I still had a high IQ. So my parents were like, your IQ test is good. Like, how are you such a dumbass? Right?
I mean, it sounds almost like more of on the spectrum kind of thing. I mean,
right? I'm convinced that I'm somewhere like there's something there where because I do have problems with learning. It's not just an application. Like I literally have to it takes me 2 or 3 times longer to learn something than probably a normal individual. I probably got less than average intelligence. I'm okay with that. So you got to make up with it with hard work, right? So yeah, it's my tangent. I'm off where we're trying to go here. But I always knew that the military was something that I wanted to do, but it's not necessarily something that I was willing to put the energy into either. So, but once I made that decision, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Now I have to apply myself. And luckily, when I got to Hawaii, I had some leaders that really invested. Like I was having to read FM 7-8 and 7-10, which now it's 21 or it's 7 no, is what is it? Whatever it is now, 7-8 different. It's the infantry base of the Bible, right? And memorize it, that and the Ranger Handbook, basically, and really dug in like, hey, doctrine's very important. You need to be able to do the thing on the battlefield, but you also need to understand the theoretical concepts behind it so you can better visualize it as you move up in rank. And I always to this day, I'm glad that happened. And at some point in time, we had some SF teams come into Hawaii from First Group, and they were doing some cool shit, right? They're blowing off all the doors on our little shoot house there. And what really convinced me is I'd helped them with one of their ranges, and they made the time. They came and gave us 10 of us these certificates of signed by their commander, of appreciation. Man, this E7 just came down here with this captain's signature on it. Really appreciative of the small thing that we did for them. Who does that, right? And they just seem like really cool people, and they're doing cool things. I was like, man, I think that's at that point in time. I was scoring a 300 on the PD test. I had my shit together. I was doing all right. I think that's something I want to go try.
So this is mid-late 90s?
That was so I went to selection 2001. Okay. So it was probably, I think when they came out there, it was probably late 2000.
Okay. So you decide, hey, this is the path I want to go, and you put your package in or whatever, and was it fairly smooth sailing getting to selection?
No, it hurt my knee. I hurt my knee pretty bad from overtraining a little bit before selection. So then it's a month time frame where I went to selection. I felt like I probably wasn't in good enough shape, and actually it wasn't smooth. If I had been some of the cadre selection, I wouldn't have selected me. I actually got bored at the end. I almost didn't make selection. I did all right on all the runs and the rucks and up, but on the obstacle course, there's a couple rules. There was one called, what's it called? It's called the dirty name. You got to get up on this log and shimmy down this log backward, and you got to turn around. And you got to walk over these. It used to be a ladder, basically this old rickety ladder. Now it's actually welded things. But I was going over that, and I tripped and I bounced, and it's a 20-foot drop, and I landed. It's probably the same thing in Budge. candidate, you failed to negotiate this obstacle. Like, he's not going to ask me if I'm okay. Would you like to try again? I'm like, yeah. And after that, like, that one knocked the wind. I couldn't climb one of the other ropes after that. So that's like 2 majors that I failed. And then land navigation, you got a rubber duck, you have it tied down to you. And we're getting in the truck one night. It's like one of the last nights. And I had my weapon, and somebody handed me theirs. And they said, hey, I'm going to count everybody in. You got a little D-ring. So what I should have done is taken his weapon, put the 550 cord on my D-ring. He gets in, we get in the truck starts to move, and it bounces, and I lose this dude's weapon out of my hand. Shit. So I gave him my weapon, went to the cadre, and regardless of what the reason is, you still lost a weapon, which is a big deal. So I went to the board for that. Then. Like, hey, no excuses. This is what happened. I screwed up. I should have tied this thing down. I didn't do that, and this was the result. So lost a weapon. It's a big deal. And, I was a no-go on basically 2 obstacles of the obstacle course. Fully thinking they weren't going to select me. They're like, look, we're taking a risk, right? But, we're going to give you a chance.
Do you know why they did? I mean, because I think a lot of times they wouldn't have. Did they need people, or was
I think they needed people at the time, because it was the 750 ramp up. I think they called it 550 ramp, because even when I got done with the Q course, they took 30 of us that were prior infantry and had expert infantryman's badges, and we, instead of going right to group, we had to come back. And that's why Jeff Doherty, who was one of your other guests, is why I was one of his instructors, because they didn't have enough instructors. We didn't have enough SF to really fill the ranks, so they're going to ramp it up. Because at the time, teams had like 6 or 7 people, and that was even with like a team ghosted without people on it. So, yeah, I think that they needed some people, and they're like, okay, this guy's obviously not a complete idiot, but
just
right?
partial.
I mean, but again, if I was, and I'm out of selection all the time. Like, one of my best friends is out there as the Sergeant Major. Selection's still super hard, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I would have selected me, because it's a pretty big deal, like losing a weapon like that. I don't know if, regardless of what the reason is.
Yeah, I mean, there were a handful of times that guys lost weapons. When I was at Team 3, and it's like the whole fucking command shuts down to look for it.
Right.
Which is ironic considering how we left Afghanistan and lost fucking a few million of them there, but that's for another time. But all right, so you end up in selection. With the way that you learn and some of the struggles that you had, was selection a total kick in the dick, or did you?
There's a lot of things that do come out, like land navigation is one of those things that I've always been extremely strong at, which is odd because I actually failed regimental pre-ranger because of navigation, which it's a different story. It's a good story, but when it came to certain things like basic infantry tactics, the way I can visualize things and understanding some of the doctrine and everything, I've just naturally been strong at a lot of that. We had a selection like the rucks. I was on a gun team forever, and thank God in Hawaii, I was like, man, as a first, when you're an assistant gunner, they're just giving you everything. So your rucksack was like 140 pounds, right? So I was on a gun team for a really long time, so that was in my favor. At that point in time, I was physically fit, so I didn't have a problem with that aspect of it. In fact, one of the things I was pretty well known for in the Q course is I could look at a map, and I had a photographic memory. So that wasn't something that I had a photographic. So I could look at a map, and I could plan the route out, do everything, and put it away and not look at it again for like 12 kilometers. Like, I didn't, which was also, it's a double-edged sword because you get a little bit too cocky. And I'd find myself on the star course and selection, like just thinking about other shit. And I'd blow past, one of my, I'd blow past my backstop. I'm like, wait a minute, let me stop. That was my backstop. I need to go back now. I just wasted 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But then when I got blown up in 2008, I lost that. That I don't have that anymore. So.
Once you made it through selection, what was the day or the date that you made it through?
I don't know. It was before 9/11.
Okay.
So when 9/11 happened, I'd already been selected, but I'd also decided that I wasn't going to go to Special Forces. I was going to go to the 82nd Airborne Division due to what was probably bad advice. I talked to people, and I had like these aspirations of getting into the unit, right, Delta Force, and like, well, if you're going to do that, this is before the war, right? You go to like an airborne unit first and do these things, and they can see that you're mature enough. And they don't give a shit about any of that stuff, right? Now they just want you to go and make sure that you got the attributes and you're capable to go to OTC. But because of that, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the 82nd. I'm not going to go to section. But then when 9/11 kicked off, it wasn't soon after that I got a call from Special Warfare Center in school, like, hey, we seen our orders for the 2nd, but you passed selection. Those orders have been deleted. You're coming to the Q course.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't argue with it. I was like, okay, cool. Again, I think that's because they needed the numbers, right? They're like, hey, anybody that's passed selection, like, get in there and have them.
Yeah. How was the Q course for you?
Oh, man, that was a great experience. It was long, right? When I went through it, like, I was an 18 Bravo, which is a Special Forces Weapons Sergeant. So it was about 2 years long from start to finish. But, man, I still think about that stuff. You learn so much in the Q course. And as an infantryman, so in small unit tactics phase, I had a lot of fun there, even though it sucks. I lost like 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And I went through, it was like the worst ice storm in North Carolina here. So at that point, so every time you like put your rucksack down, you have to break off all the ice to get into the rucksack. And it was miserable, but it was also, it was a lot of fun. SEER school, survival school, like obviously you can't really talk about it. That teaches you so much about yourself and other people. Like at that point in my life, I'd never been in a position to where I'd had that little sleep for that long. I mean, I even not like micro naps, right? And they want you to like have micro naps and stuff. But I was such a dumbass that I didn't learn my lesson. And a couple of the interviews, one of the interviews, they had to come out of roll. They're like, "Hey, what are you doing? You like a problem?" Like, no, this is what I thought. So you're like, no. The point is not to be a complete hard ass because you can get yourself killed. Like, stop being a dumbass, right? Like, oh, okay. So had to play the game a little better.
Yeah.
But you're just like, okay. It's just knowing what your body can actually do and go through and still be able to function. That's just eye opening, right? It's like, no, you can actually endure way more than you think you can.
Yeah, and I don't know how your instructors were. I imagine they were probably similar to the Navy's, but I was astonished at how good they are at role playing and how good. I mean, I know a lot of it is it's after 6 days of not eating or sleeping, much, but freezing your ass off at night and whatever. But in that camp, like it felt fucking real.
Right. Yeah.
I was really surprised at how good of a job that they did at that. It was fascinating. But so all right. So once you make it, your first station was to 3rd Group. Is that?
Yeah, so 3rd Special Forces Group. So when you go to the Q course or when you go to Special Forces, you have this whole wish list to choose, like, where you want to go. I definitely didn't choose 3rd Group. French is my language. I definitely didn't choose French. Again, they're going to put you where they need you, right? So, I went and signed into 3rd Group, and they were leaving in like 3 weeks, and that's when they're like, "Hey, you're going to be assigned to 3rd Group, but you're actually going to go back to SWCS for X amount of time to be a small unit tactics instructor with these other people." So it was like, well, I was kind of kicking the balls. I was like, damn, I'm going to go to combat. But luckily, once we got done with our 6 months there, we signed back into 3rd Group. They're like, hey, again, another rotation. We're leaving in 3 weeks. Get squared away, go down and get you some gear, and then it was right on a bird to Afghanistan. And that was beginning of 2004, maybe into 2003, beginning of 2004.
So walk us through the kind of what's going through your head as you first get to Afghanistan and what that was like and kind of what you were dealing with in terms of mentality.
Mentality, right? I just graduated the Q course. So in my head, I'm this badass, right? I'm like, damn, I'm somebody special. I got a Special Forces tab, which a lot of Green Berets do. But the reality is, like, you go to Special Forces, everybody has a Special Forces tab. Nobody gives a shit, right? You're not, now you're the new guy, right? So now you got to, so I was like, yep. Thinking like I'm part of the club, a little bit too big of an ego. But I was waiting to go to this fire base. It was a Camp Lane out in the middle of nowhere, up on the Argandog River. And it was a freshly built fire base. So I'm all kitted out. I got this new stuff they bought me. Like, I look all cool, I'm the cool guy, body armor.
Cool
get on
and heavy.
Right. I'm just like kitted up, ready to get in the fight. And get on the Chinook. And it's a resupply ring route out there. So, we got a bunch of like salad and other stuff. And I get out with the stuff, and CH-47 lands and the ramp drops. And as I'm getting out, it's just open field, and like there's these jacked, tan dudes with no shirts on and Ranger panties and goggles and four-wheelers. And I'm like, wow, this is not what I'm all like I'm all kitted up, ready for combat. I look out, and there's like gun trucks in the periphery of this HLZ, like pulling security. Freaking nowhere, like. Usually like, all right, get over here, like put your stuff over here. So then like have my arms wrapped around this big sweaty swole dude on this four-wheeler with all my stuff on. And and then I was taught that nobody gives a shit that you got a Special Forces tab. Now you got to prove yourself, right? Nobody cares what you did yesterday. That I came from the infantry. Nope. shut up, prove yourself here, do these things, learn. And yeah, it was interesting. It was like my second day at the fire base, and I love this guy. I talked to him recently. He was a team sergeant in this other team. He came out like 6 o'clock in the morning, and they had the old Haji wash machine I didn't really know how to use. So I was like, hey, we call him Angry Bob. I said, do you know how to use this thing? And he's like looking at me all mad. He comes over like, this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do I look like a fucking engineer to you? And he picks this thing up and he throws it. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay. And then I look over and there's two other guys laughing like, hey, man, don't ever talk to him before he's had his coffee in the morning. That's where you screwed up. Right? I mean, great guy, but yeah, you don't talk to him before 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And just the whole thing was, he sent me down and he's like, hey, Chuck, he's like, now you're doing a little bit too much. He's like, if you do everything today, what are you going to do tomorrow? Right? It's like, so then you find that balance of, not being a blowhard where you're just like, oh, I gotta do all this. Like actually just being value added. Like what is it that I need to learn? What is it that I need to do to be value added? I'm a big believer that takes about 3 years when you come to a special forces team to, no matter what you're doing, to learn everything that you need to do to be a fire and forget weapon system, because there's so much stuff that you got to be good at. We're like the jack of all trades, right? Yeah. Like I'll give you the pirate analogy on Green Berets in a minute, but we're like the dirty deeds done dirt cheap. So we got to be, we're not very surgical, right? We're not the ones with all the cool stuff. We're not an SMU. So we got to be good at all these different things. And there's just so much that takes a long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the regular SEAL teams are much that same way.
Yeah, very same way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we spend so much time doing all different kinds of shit, and yeah, you've got to be competent at all of it, and most of it is pretty complex, so. You
got to be adaptable, right? Because you're going to be asked to do some shit that you never like
yeah.
We got to do this. Like, what do you? Yeah. Why are we being asked to do this?
Yeah, well, I think that's the big difference between the two Tier 1 commands and the rest of soft forces is they're, pretty laser focused on counterterrorism, and that's their wheelhouse, and they're better than everybody at it. But if you were to ask, them to do, I don't know what the Green Beret equivalent to a combat swimmer op is, but if you ask Dev Group guys to go take their fucking Dragers and put them on and attack a fucking GoPlat, I think it would be a struggle for them, But I am curious, like that deployment and like leading up to it, and as you're getting there, was there an understanding from your perspective as to what the goal of that deployment was? Like why you were where you were at, and what the thing you were trying to accomplish was, or was it more of a, this is what, we're just here and we're fighting, and just do what the fuck you're told and shut up, or what was there any left and right flank that way?
So I was showing up after that. They were already there, right? So I was coming in pretty blind. So they'd already been there for like 2-3 weeks. I guess I tried to get a good understanding as a new guy, but I didn't quite. At the time I knew that, pretty early in the war at that point in time, we had what was called the AMF. It was basically a mercenary force. So every ODA had about 120 to 200 people that they paid that were your private force, plus we were working with the Afghans. And at that time I knew, hey, we're going to go in. We're going to run the very first Afghan elections. So your job is to keep stability in this region, because it's a pretty hot area before. It's a pretty nasty area, quite up north. So you're going to go in and you're going to achieve security here using the Afghan forces that you have there to ensure this valley is safe, so we can run these elections. And then, tight. At the time, there was no really IDs there. Like when you got on the highway, that was kind of your safe time, going back and forth. And I knew that with that in mind, like that's kind of going back to the dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Like this fire base would have showers. Like if you wanted to go take a bath, like once a week we'd go down and pull security at the river, and you get cleaned up. And it was interesting because our Afghans would shave their balls down there, and they'd leave the razors in there. So people were cutting their feet, so you have to wear flip flops. And
Jesus. And
the Afghan rivers have all these freshwater crabs. So if you weren't wearing like some good sandals, like they sit there and bite your feet and stuff. So it was just bizarre. But you're just out there in the middle of nowhere with these Afghans. So you've got, with the infantry uplift, maybe we had 2 teams, so maybe 34 Americans and about 400 Afghans in the middle of nowhere, in bad guy country. And that's just what you're doing, and you gotta trust them, and you gotta, there was one day where one of the AMF outposts, this old man comes like, hey man, they like kidnapped my deaf mute son. I'm pretty sure they're in there. I'm more like, okay. So then we got to go roll this this group of people up, and that's what they were doing. So we got this guy's son back, but now we just rolled up and arrested a number of these guys. So how's that going to affect the loyalty of other people? How do we got to we got to up our security and whatnot? But because we were paying them, right? It wasn't a huge deal, but it was just it's a weird mindset out there because you really are out in the middle of nowhere. And
How did you guys deal with that, with the guys that were deaf, mute, minor?
Yeah, it's, deal with it. I mean, we didn't go out and do anything like illegal, right? But we definitely, roll that gap. And then we had to talk to everybody, like, hey man, this isn't
gonna fly.
This isn't for here. You're not gonna do that. And then at that time there was no real Afghan judicial system or anything, so we ended up flying that person back to the overall AMF chief. What they did with him, I don't know. But
did you struggle personally with that?
With actually dealing with people like that?
Yeah,
that's always weird, right? It's we didn't allow that kind of stuff within our forces. We'd always tell them, hey man, this isn't going to be acceptable, right? So I mean, there was times later in the war, I mean, we'd go into these villages and there'd be these kids shot through the chest, right? Because of these tribal conflicts. It had nothing to do with us. And to the Afghans, it's normal, no, hey, we got, this village and got beef with this village and this happened, so that's why these kids died. And it almost seemed like it was normal. The mom would be there crying, but everybody else is yeah, this is just the way it is. It's wow, that's a crazy lifestyle. We can't comprehend the tribal systems, Western mindset. So yeah, I've never actually been able to understand the whole system. In fact, I was talking to an interpreter the other day that I ran into. I was like, hey, I'm writing this paper, this anthropology paper for my degree, and I'm doing it on the African country of Chad. And really, what are your thoughts on the tribal? Can you explain the tribal system? He's like, nah, man, it doesn't make any sense. You just have to live it, and that's just the way it is. And what's acceptable to them isn't acceptable to us.
Yeah. On that deployment in particular, was it busy from an operational standpoint?
It was fairly busy. Yeah, it was really cool stuff. There'd be missions where we'd go up in the mountains. If you wanted, very not a whole lot of stuff on. You'd have a little Chicom vest, which is I always brought a little red Chicom vest with minimal amounts of magazines and enough water. And you'd be up in the mountains doing recce type stuff, trying to figure out where their spotting positions are, or some of their routes are. You'd be out there for days, right? And then a lot of 4-wheeler missions out there just in the valley on 4-wheelers, to where you'd have one rigged up with a machine gun. And then we did some ops with SEALs. We actually took over a SEAL mission set there as Boston Brawler, to where we'd load up our 4-wheelers in these Chinooks. So we'd land with probably 6 total Chinooks on the periphery, and then teams would go into Blackhawks and whatever the village is. But we'd roll out where one 4-wheeler would be loaded up with all your extra ammo and medical stuff. One 4-wheeler would have your 240 and everything. You set up in these positions and pack back up. So that was pretty cool. It was just you were being very innovative in how you end up rigging up all these things you could go do these missions on. And
I guess from your perspective of what you were expecting to experience being a Green Beret in a combat zone, was it what you thought it would be?
No, it was actually very surprising, to where one of the reasons why I really enjoyed being a Green Beret is you're out there in that environment. And back then, this is before we had SIPRNet and technology, so your sit reps would go up via radio, right? So maybe you could send a 3-page Word document. So it was very, we say mission command in the Army, which is a decentralized operation. So not a whole lot of micromanagement. Hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Within this bubble, you can almost do whatever you want to. Just tell us what you're doing. Send us a 5W, who, what, where, when, and why. You can go out and do that thing. And I think that the level of risk that you were expected to accept out there, and then that the commander was allowed to actually make decisions on, was really cool. I think that's kind of what we do as Green Berets. Hey, I don't need a whole lot of money. I don't need a whole lot of guidance. I just need what's the commander's intent. Give me enough to what I need. I'll figure everything else out, right? We're supposed to be able to put us anywhere in the world, small American footprint, low cost, longer duration than you send other people out there, and using mostly indigenous ways to solve the problem. That's what we'll do.
Yeah. Sounds pretty autonomous compared to a lot of, even within the special operations community, I think that's more flexibility and autonomy than I think most groups have, which I know is part of the gig. But
not quite as sexy as, a lot of your mission sets, like, say like your direct, I've obviously been shot a number of times. There is that aspect, but it's such a low amount. In fact, my most favorite deployments are the ones that weren't very kinetic, where we were building things. We're like, hey, go out. And one deployment, we're asked to go build the Afghan Special Forces program. We'd already built our Special Operations program a couple years before. Like, now you're going to build a Special Forces program. You're going to model these people after you, but you need to figure out what they look like. You need to figure out how selection is run, what their Q course looks like, how they're going to do it. And guess what? We're not going to give you any more money. In fact, you're not even going to get a line of funding for this thing. So good luck. Go figure it out. And we built it, and that was one of the things that endured to the end. In fact, during the pullout, it was Afghan Special Forces teams that were linked up with the Americans, really helping out with everything. It was cool to build something that endured, that really did have a pretty positive impact on the country.
Yeah. But, I mean, so obviously doing 17 deployments, 12 of which were to combat zones, for the sake of some amount of brevity in the show, we can't outline each one of them, but I would love if you could kind of walk through your career from that kind of chronological aspect and just hit the highlights from the ones that you feel like are worth highlighting, especially when it comes to kind of the overall here, on this deployment, we were here trying to accomplish this, and these things happened, that kind of framework.
Okay. Yeah. So I say it's great, you do got a lot of autonomy, but it's also a double-edged sword, right? Because half the time you're like, what is it that you want us to accomplish, right? So at the time, from first deployment on, the beginning of the war was all just, man, you were home maybe 2 months, and 2 or 3 months, and with that you got training, you got all these other things that you're doing. So the head on pillow, like it was just, I went to that first deployment, and then came home and we found ourselves in Yemen, and then in Yemen got crazy. We ended up pulling security on the top of the embassy because there was an imminent threat. And 2 days after we pulled out, they hit 2 or 3 days after they hit the embassy, and then we went right to Iraq. And then that was a wild trip. Iraq, we were working with the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment there, H.R. McMaster's. We had a Special Forces company, and we had like another National Guard team with us, and we worked in the city of Talifar, and it was wild. Like I wasn't even sniper qualified at the time, but I found myself as a sniper, and I ended up going through one of the first SODIC level 2 courses there. Luckily, our sergeant major had run the sniper course, so he ran us through this course out there, which that POI ended up becoming SODIC level 2. But I'd go up at the top of this castle. Our team had the middle of the city, and I'd go up there with my M24, with a lot of ammo, and I'd come back with no ammo because it was just a turkey shoot up there. We set up this gunfire detection system that we brought, had acoustic arrays, and it had this camera that when a shot came in, it would slew and give you distance and direction, and it would show. The first night we set that up, it took like 10,000 rounds. This thing was like, right? It wasn't set up for that. That's how wild it was out there. And the first mission that we did with the 3rd ACR, the right seat ride, which is generally supposed to be an easy mission, and there was no other SF team out there, so I think it was just them going into this place called the Sarai District. They surrounded this district with Abrams, and they had their Kiowas up and Apaches, and this is our first really taste of Talifar. And the ramps drop, and we get out, and all this machine gun fires coming in. This lieutenant colonel, it's pretty close, just gets shredded, and I'm like, oh shit, so we get in this building, which is not the building we're supposed to be in with this Afghan unit, and we're going in, and it's just me and our medic and a ton of Afghans, and we're going in, and we're clearing, and look over, and this guy's got this PKM, but the rounds are coming out of the PKM, and they're going around his neck. I'm like, how the fuck is that going to work? Like, what's going on there? So, and we get in this kitchen. So cleared this kitchen. I can see through this doorway. There's a courtyard, but it's like a 3-story building, and there's all this gunfire outside. I'm like, man, we got to clear the rest of this thing. So I'm looking at this Afghan. He's kind of holding down the door, but then he stops. He gives his buddy his rifle, opens up this refrigerator, and starts drinking milk. Man, we are going to die in this city if this is what we're dealing with. Like, what are we doing? So me and the medic end up clearing and going up to the roof and figuring out where we're at. And they shot up a couple of helicopters that day, and it was a good display of the enemy here doesn't give a shit how much firepower you're bringing. All these Bradleys, there's some tanks out there too. They don't care. They're going to fight, and they did.
These were in Iraq or Afghanistan?
This is Iraq. This is Talifar, Iraq. So
you mentioned Afghans.
I'm sorry, I wasn't Afghans. It was Iraqis.
Okay.
I was like, man, this is crazy. And finally, the 3rd ACR, they lost like 50 people. Like they were always like losing tanks and stuff out there. Big Master's like, all right, we're going to build a berm around the city. We're going to the engineer build a berm. We're going to give everybody X amount of days to get out. Anybody left, we're gonna fight them. So we brought down a battalion full of Kurds from the north and 2 other SF teams. So I think we had 5 SF teams there. Our Iraqis that we'd been working with, the Kurds, and we started the southernmost part of the city. And we dropped the walls with tanks, and we just do that street by street with the Iraqis. And there was at one point we got to this place called Route Barracuda, and we had to stop for like a day or two to see if anybody else wanted to leave the city. And the fire was so intense from our side that for like 3 or 4 days straight, it was just AC 130, and at night, at that time we didn't have pressurized, it was AC 130s and H64s just constantly just firing the whole time. So when you went to take a nap or you sleep at night, you had to put the Haji blanket over your head so the rounds wouldn't drop on your face and you get a bruise. But yeah, we just leveled it, and then after that we didn't have any more problems.
When you did the call out and said, hey, here's your chance to leave, did a lot of people leave or did most people stay?
A lot of people left, and it was a pretty big Al-Qaeda stronghold there too. So we caught a lot of people that dressed up as women. But a lot of people stayed, and they knew it was coming, and that's why we basically had to level that part of the city. We got back to that Sarai district, which we had problems in the first place, and a couple of the places. There was a mission we went on where we lost 2 of the 3rd ACR guys. We lost one guy, he got shot through the throat. So we put him in an ambulance vehicle at 113, and as we were going off, they blew that thing up. And we ended up pulling off the objective there because we ran out of ammo in the Bradleys. Wow. Too. So that's how crazy it was. And then one of my team leaders I had in 2010, he was in the Ranger Regiment at the time. The Rangers came in like, hey, we're thinking about going to this area here. We got these targets. We're like, hey, if you go in there, take Bradleys, take tanks with you. I was like, because we just went exactly where this is. Here's what happened. And I was like, we'll give you sniper support. So we did that. But they didn't take the Bradleys and stuff. And they went there and they ended up with like a lot of hand-to-hand combat. They lost a couple Rangers, a lot of people wounded. And when I met that guy later, he's like, oh, yeah, you were in Talifar. I was like, yeah, we totally blew off what you guys said. And we went in there anyway. We were like real light, and we got hemmed up for it. Yeah. So
that was in 2010?
No, that was in 2005.
Okay.
So chronology, so we went to Iraq 2005. We went to the USAJFKSWCS. It was the very first USAJFKS mountaineering course. We were a team that got stood up as a mountain team, and I'm deathly afraid of heights. So I don't know how I've made it as an airborne guy and as a mountain guy. I've done a lot of lying to God on the side of a mountain, right? Yeah. Get on a pitch, it's way above my skill level. I'm like, God, just let me survive this. I'll stop masturbating or whatever. And move on. So I went to the mountain course. So we were late to our next trip to Afghanistan, which was like 06, Ghazni. And again, that was a while. They're like, hey, you need to go find work. That's what they told us. We don't really find what you need to do there. We're like, okay, well, there's a partner. We need a partner force. Like, yeah, but you can't leave your fire base without a partner force. Like, okay, well, there's an Afghan army unit up here. We're going to go link up with them and see what we can do. Like, yeah, but you can't actually go link up with them unless you have a partner force to get there. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, the military will do that, right? They'll do give you a lot of stupid guidance. So you got to figure out how to do it. So we ended up standing up what's called the Ghazni SRT Special Response Team, a police unit. And I know, like, the whole drama with USAID, right? But we had to use USAID, use a lot of their money for recruitment. We said, hey, come do this thing and we'll teach you how to read and write. So we had USAID pay for all that stuff. Got about 30, 40 people, stood up this SWAT unit that was extremely effective. In fact, we were working with them many years later, and they got disbanded because they were a little bit too effective. They were all Hazaras, and they were just killing too many people. I mean, they're all like bad guys, but like, hey, like, there's actually laws now. You got to like follow the law. That was cool. Standing up something again, we built this thing, and it was me and the medic that really like, hey, like, you guys are taking lead on this. So we were allowed to come up with the concepts and go to the meetings, as these younger Green Berets to actually build this program, figure out with the police chief, how do we recruit them? How do we build the compound? How do we train them? What missions are we going to launch them on? Come back from that mission, go back to Afghanistan. We find ourselves in Helmand, Afghanistan. And every time you left the wire there, you knew you were going to lose somebody. It was usually Afghans. We could top fire bases getting attacked every day. And we were tasked with going down and getting the first mine-resistant vehicles in country at that time because, IEDs at that point in time were just blowing through everything. In fact, on our mission where we were going to that fire base, we lost some vehicles. we were even going through the middle of the desert. So there's no way to get around the IDs. They're everywhere in the middle of the desert. They're on the roads. They're really hard to get around. But we came and we flew into Kandahar, and we took the class in the RG-34s, whatever they were, 33s, RG-33s. And as we were taking them back out to the fire base, the Taliban hit us with some massive IEDs, blew the mine roll off the lead vehicle. The vehicle I was in, it picked it up, and there's pictures. It picked this vehicle up, launched it 50 meters down the road, and it's like facing the wrong way. You can't even tell what it is. Killed the driver immediately. Killed the JTAC sitting next to me immediately. The captain it broke his back. He was stuck in the vehicle. He couldn't use his legs properly anymore. And then me and the junior engineer got seriously wounded in that. I was gunning. I broke through the gunner's display with my face. And then luckily I had my helmet on. I didn't have the chin strap on because we're on the hardball. We didn't expect to get into a fight. So I'd hit the ceiling, and I still have the helmet there. You can see where the screw lodged in the helmet. So I probably would have been dead if I hadn't had that on my head. And then it just destroyed my face. They fixed my nose. It took years to rebuild this upper jaw. I didn't have teeth for like 4 years, and had to relearn how to walk properly again. It crushed a bunch of ribs. And
that was in 08, right?
That was in 08, yeah.
So, I mean, when that happened, was that an initiation of a follow-on ambush, or how did you guys respond to that?
There was no ambush that day. It was just a huge 500-pound explosive in a culvert right next to a police station. You can see it in the pictures. Like, isn't that a police station right there? So, there's no ambush on that one.
But how did you guys respond to it? Like, can you kind of walk us through as you're driving? It goes off. Are you knocked unconscious? I assume. Like, did you wake up in a hospital, or what happened?
So I remember talking to the commander. I'm like, "Hey, what happened?" And it's just I couldn't see anything. I'm like hanging like kind of upside down, like sideways. He's like, "Hey man, I think we hit an IED." He's like, "I think Bill's dead. He's here, and like half of his face is not there." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Yeah, I think the JTAC's dead, man." He's like, "Okay." I was like, I couldn't get a hold of, like, the guy in the back wasn't saying anything. I was like, and I can't see, but Josh might be dead too. Will Jefferson was the JTAC sitting next to me. He's like, yeah, I'm stuck. I can't move my legs. And it was like, it's real foggy, right? So I remember the medic, a guy named Dan Adams, him and a couple of guys pulled me out of the vehicle and set me down. And I remember like, I was like, I don't have any teeth. And I don't really remember much there. They said I was going in and out of consciousness at that point. And then next thing I remember being on the helicopter, and I remember coming to in the hospital, and this guy was like sewing up my face. So the guy was like trying to hit me with like a ton of IVs. He couldn't hit a vein. I was getting real pissed. I'm like, stop! Get somebody here that's competent. And it was like some NATO guy. I forgot what country he's from. And finally, like when I really like remember what was going on, I like woke up and I look over my buddy Josh, the engineer. He's like all jacked up, and it's just me and him. I'm like, well, shit. Did the captain make it? Like, where is he? He was in another room because he was really jacked up. And but when I got up, I saw he was like sitting there with his mouth open, like we're all jacked up. And I was like, it'd be funny if I took this piece of bread and shoved it down his throat. So I put this piece of bread, and he's like, I was like, why did you do that? Shit like that. But
how long of a recovery was that? Like from the time? Well, actually, I guess. Did you get flown into Kandahar and stabilized there, and then to Germany, and then to Walter Reed? Was that the whole kind of normal?
So I went to Germany. We were there for about a week. And I think it was in Germany where they actually like went, and, like you can't even really see the scar up here. Like, you could see the skull came up. So they fixed that, and I'm going back, and that's orthomaxillofacial surgery at Womack. We went to go to Walter Reed as the one that fixed, everything else. And then I got in a little trouble because I snuck into a 2010 deployment. So it took 4 years. I didn't get my last surgery and get cleared for duty until 2012. But I snuck into a deployment in 2010, which I kind of got a little bit of trouble for.
How did you sneak into a deployment?
I just faked it. Like, you got to go through the soldier readiness center, and you got to like get all your medical. I forged all that shit so I was cleared for duty. And the battalion CSM, his battalion, maybe his group. One of them brought me in. No, it was Mark Eckert. He brought me in. He's like, hey, Chuck. He's like, you know how I know that you're not supposed to be here? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you don't have any front teeth. Right? It's a pretty good indicator, right? You look like a hockey player still. And he's like, and I called your surgeon, your psych, and they're like, no, he's got X amount of surgery. There's no way he should be deployed right now. He's like, so look, he's like, I'm not going to send you home early. But when you get back, you can't even look at an ODA. Like, you're not going anywhere until there's paperwork, like actual non-forged paperwork from the surgeon, and you got all your teeth, and then you can go back and you can take open over, or you can go to a team again.
Yeah. How many surgeries in that 4-year period, or I guess the 2 years, the SNUC deployment, and then the subsequent 2 years, were the bulk of your surgeries in that 4-year window?
Yeah, it was mostly Jolly. You know, they did one on here. Obviously, they did the ones here, and then down here, and then they had to cultivate a bunch of bone from the bottom here and just rebuild up here. So it took a while. So they had to do a bunch of bone and skin grafts up here just to get it prepped so they could actually put these teeth in there. So it took all that time. The last surgery was in 2012 because when they put it in there, they had to let it sit and say, like, one of the bone grafts didn't exactly take as well as they thought they were going to. So they had to go back and do another bone graft. And then same thing with the skin graft. The first skin graft didn't take as well as they thought it should. So they had to go do another skin graft and let that fix. So I think they did maybe 6 total jaw surgeries and the nose surgery. And what else they did.
During that recovery period, we'll say from 2008 to 2012 minus the deployment, I imagine that those types, grafting and bone rearranging surgeries are pretty painful. Were you like hopped up on pain meds the whole time? Like, did you ever struggle with that like a lot of guys did where, they had you on so much different stuff that coming off of it was a struggle, or that you found yourself getting addicted to it or any of that?
I find my body hates it now. My body doesn't do well with opioids. In fact, I would say that for opioids to actually have the pain effect, I got to take a ton of them to make my body itch. But because I was taking so many pain meds at the time and I couldn't really eat, because every time, at one point they took one surgery, they took all 4 wisdom teeth and they did a bone graft. So it's all like sewn up. And my stomach got real jacked up from taking the meds and especially NSAIDs without having any food in there. So it caused real bad long-term stomach issues, but I was never addicted to them. But I was also a dumbass. I had one bone graft. It was the next day. I called my buddy up, Rich Cullen. You should have that guy on the show. That's the most interesting man in Special Forces. The guy used to hang out with like Sublime in California, and the whole found himself accidentally in a war zone when he was being a punk rocker in Germany and got on the wrong train. Anyway, I called him. I was like, "Hey man, you gonna do a 12-mile ruck tomorrow?" And he's like, "Didn't you just have surgery?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm feeling pretty good." He's like, "All right." So we get halfway through this ruck. I'm just all white, and because my blood pressure had gotten up, it messed up one of the screws. So now I see my pulse in my eye from. There's also ocular nerve damage. It's when my eyes are kind of they don't focus properly. But doing stupid stuff like that probably prolonged my ability to recover too, because we didn't have the programs that we have now with the therapists and everything either. Because I got critically wounded again a couple of years later, and I was able to recover in record time because I wasn't being a dumbass and whatnot. But no, I never got addicted to them. In fact, I hate pain meds. I always have a big thing of Percocets and stuff that I'll usually end up throwing away because I don't like it. I can't poop. My body itches. So I've never been I was I wonder how people. I guess I understand how people get addicted to it, but it's not pleasant.
Yeah, it fucks you up as much as it helps.
Yeah, I got to take really strong stuff after a surgery, and that's the only thing that'll work for me. And then I just don't take anything.
Yeah, the 2010 deployment during that time that was to Afghanistan. Was that an active deployment also, or was it relatively late?
That's the one where we stood up the Afghan Special Forces program. Okay. So that was a really, really cool team. It was even though we did go out on a couple missions, but I really, in retrospect, I really enjoyed those deployments because you built something that endured, and you were allowed again. They're like, "Hey, we're not going to give you what you need." The standard Green Beret mission, you need to go do this impossible thing without enough guidance and without enough resources to do it, but you're going to figure it out because that's what you do.
Yeah,
go do it.
Right. Spending the 2 years recovering after that, you come back in 2012. What did the next few deployments look like?
Yeah, so I found myself in another Southwest Asian country with a team I was supposed to take over. It was a really fun trip, and then went to the team I did take over, and ended up just being blessed with an incredible group of people. Really awesome. But we set a good team culture. We're at the bat hey, let's bring the sports psych in because we have these now. What is this team about? We came up with the 5 things that we're about that the team built. Just built a ton of SOPs. We came with the belt buckle program to where hey, if you're going to be part of this team, you got to prove that you want to be here, but you also got to learn, and you got to take the educational piece just as serious as the training piece. You got to understand what you're talking about. The doctor and everything else on top of being able to do the thing. We're going to be really about the basics. We're not going to be the sexy team doing all this super cool stuff. We're going to do things that keep us alive in combat. We're going to just do it until, we're sick of it. And we went to Afghanistan, and that was a very kinetic mission. We were assigned the national mission unit there, the 6th Special Operations CANDAC, which goes all over the country. And I forgot how many missions in, but I'd come back on a medevac bird. I got shot 3 times, fighting out into a close kill zone, which we'll go into the details of that. But it's just 2013, again, national mission unit, going into a place called Tagab Valley. So we got to, again, I'm going to write some books when I get out about that the Army is not going to be very happy about. I love the Army. I recommend people join the military, but I think that we need to be a little bit more honest with ourselves from a lot of the stuff that we did screw up in these, not just at the end, but so we can learn from them and not make the same mistakes again. So with that, we got a phone call, right? The team's like, hey, we're doing this company level operation. And part of that operation's in this valley where, we had 2 teams. We had our team and a team for another group, a first group team that were with us. And the way it was laid out was they would go out on a mission and we'd be the support entity, right? So we're the ones that ran the HLZ, ran all the stuff in the back, and then they would come back and they would be the support entity for us. So it was just back to back. And then obviously when one team's out, one team's working with the battalion staff and everything. So they called us like, hey, we got this operation coming up. We need you to write this con op for it, and we need it by tomorrow morning. Shit, right? And these con ops, the concept of the operations, basically a PowerPoint deck that's at the time was like 78, maybe 100 pages, right? Like, oh shit. So, but it's not real. It's just a concept of the operation. It's not your detailed planning. It's really a permission slip to start your planning. So we stay up all night making this damn con op with the team. So we submit it maybe an hour before it was due or whatever. And get a call about an hour later. And the battalion like, hey man, the cover slide said that it's got 0% Afghan involvement in the planning. I'm like, yeah, you just called us yesterday. It's a secret document. I can't share it with the Afghans until they've been notified by their hire, which will be next week. And once they're notified by their hire, we can start working with them on some finalized planning. But they're like, hey, I don't think the boss is going to like that. Well, it's a you problem. I can physically not, we can't have the Afghans involved right now. We got to do something. I'm like, how about this? How about you pull it up, put whatever percentage you want on there that makes you happy. And he calls back. He's like, hey, man, I'm looking at the end, and there has to be a key leader engagement slide on here where, key leader engagement where you're going to get together and you're going to talk to everybody and talk about how great the country is. I'm like, look, you're asking us to go into this place. We're going to blow all these doors to these buildings that we have, that are of interest. And we're basically we're bringing the hammer down. We don't bring the Afghan Commando CANDAC unless it's hammer time, right? Basically, hey, don't make me come back here. So what do you want me to tell these guys? I'm gonna come through their village all night long. I'm gonna blow 100 doors. I'm gonna take all their mails. We're gonna interrogate all these people. We're gonna take all these bad guys. There's probably be a lot of firefights. And you're gonna be like, hey guys, you really need to support the government of Afghanistan. No, it's not the way it works. You can send another team in after that, but hey, you gotta have that. So, all right, put some bullshit slides in there. Hey, we're gonna really have them support the country after we just destroy everything. Because this is there's a huge enemy presence there. We're probably not going to sway these people over to the government, right? It's not something that's feasible. To do all that, this is an interesting story. So the other team goes out. They get their asses handed to them in a valley just north of where we're going. We're going to go to the Southern Valley in the same system. Nasty firefight. So the intel section had flown out before we went out. And they're like, hey, we're telling you guys there's hundreds of enemy there. And they have the ability to reinforce with hundreds more. And we're like, man, I've been here X amount of times. There's no way. I've never seen the enemy. How would they even mass that many people without getting destroyed by air? That's ridiculous. So because a little bit of ego and hubris, right, we didn't quite buy into the numbers. They definitely had those numbers there. Wow. I know Jeff Daugherty had talked about Tagab Valley. And the reason that you can't see in there, they can mass all they want because it's so overgrown and dense. They can do whatever they want in there. You'll never be able to see it.
But there was how many enemy fighters?
They said there was between 200 to 300 ready to fight in the valley we were going in, actually there. And we're like, yeah, it's bullshit. There's never seen that before, right? And with the ability to reinforce with the hundreds more that had attacked the other team that went up the day before. So we're getting ready to go out, right? And we're getting prepped. Or the other team's actually getting prepped. They go to the chow hall. They got their gear on, and this general's there. he's pissed. He's already pissed at us because there's 2 teams there. He didn't want 2 teams there. So I'd worked with him before. So he's like, Chuck, get your ass and all your leadership in my office right now. I'm not sure I ever told this story publicly. This guy's out, whatever. All right. I knew there was going to be some other problems because there was some other stuff brewing, because we would wear our green BDUs that we got issued when we were working with the Afghans, right? And then the team that was on support would wear the grays, right? But the Afghans wore BDUs, so we'd wear BDUs. They were issued. They were authorized to wear. And so he's in the office. He's like, what are you guys doing, Chuck? He's like, you should know better than this. I'm like, what? He's like, these uniforms. He's like, these guys are in the wrong uniform. And blah, blah, blah is going off. And I'm like, hey, sir, I knew this was coming. So I pull up the command's uniform policy. I'm like, look, these are authorized. We've already been through this. These are authorized uniforms. We issued them. They're good. And he's like, he's pissed. He looks at me. He's like, I know, Chuck. One of you motherfuckers is going to get shot because you don't have the discipline to wear the proper uniform. And maybe he's right, because the next day I got shot, right? So whether that was because I had the proper uniform on or not, we'll never know, right?
Did he give you I told you so?
Right. So, and he sent this email out saying that we were the most, freaking undisciplined force he'd ever seen because we're in these uniforms that we're clearly authorized to wear, right? So he was all pissed and chewed our ass for a good hour, and I'm sitting there at a position of attention, getting yelled at, talking about how I'm going to get shot. So we go out on this mission the next day, and it was right when we landed. The helicopters took up. They were shooting at the helicopters. The terrain is just wild. The imagery did not do this place justice, And, we land, do the standard things. And it's not like when you get off of 3 Chinooks with that many Afghans. It's not like you just all sexy run to the objective. No, you're cross-loaded. So now you got to unscrew that and get in the proper order and start moving out. It's not. Again, it's a Green Beret mission. It's not that sexy. So we're doing that. We're talking I think this is what I'm seeing. Talking to the medic. I'm like, talking to the AC-130. Like, hey. Can you? I don't know what words I can and can't say. Can you use your large IR spotlight? I think this is building 170. I think this is building blah blah blah. Can you first hit this building, hit that building? Yep. Okay. What I think I see is what I actually see. Like, hey, this route, we're in this poppy field, and poppy fields. I think they design them for people of my height, because if you're about 6'1", the guy in front of you is going to hit it, and that thing's going to hit you right in the balls, right? So you got to make a little bit more space. But even then, they're still going to. It's not a fun experience to go through these things. So I'm talking to the bird. I'm like, hey, is there a better route than the one we planned? He's like, no. You got to go this way. So, it took us a lot longer to get to where we're going. We were being very quiet, but one of our other assault elements had to blow a door to get in one of their buildings, their compounds of interest. And once that happened, it came over the net. The enemy was like, hey, now we know where they're at. Shit. So about an hour before daylight, we finally make it to our battle positions, and our plan was that we were going to clear through the buildings that we had of interest, get who we could get, and then we were going to set up multiple battle positions that were advantageous to us. And as the enemy was coming out, we were going to trick them as much, kill as many of them as we possibly could, bait them into these kill zones. We got to our battle positions that we'd planned, and they were not feasible. They were not defensible. We're like, okay, this is not good. So we find 2 that we thought would work okay, but again, this terrain is crazy, and this is the most it's like a labyrinth. It looks like you see in the you picture like a labyrinth out of some old fantasy movie. That's what it's like there, and it's crazy. And when the sun came up, all of a sudden they were so close, the hand grenades were coming over the walls. We have to push them out. They were within 10 meters of us because we just didn't have the ability to see, and the ISR platforms couldn't see through the foliage. So it was super, super close combat. And these guys aren't playing around. These guys are very good at what they do. These are Haqqani trained, people that they're not your standard farmer that's out there bored or getting paid some money. No, these are actual fightings. When you think about Thermopylae, the Spartans, no, these guys, this is what they do. They're professional fighters, and they don't give a shit. So we fought all morning. We'd push these people out through our different battle positions. One assault element would go out, then the next one. We're hitting them. We would catch them and hit them with hellfires and whatnot. And it finally came over the net that, hey, man, we see this large enemy force moving up from the south up towards my battle position. And I did the math. I'm like, okay, they're a little bit out, but I think that we can get out and get behind them and ambush them as they come up. Talked it over with the team leader. At this point in time, it had been a hell of a firefight all morning. His bell was rung from all these RPG rounds that kept hitting the wall up near where he was. Like, yep, that sounds good. So as we're going out, though, another firefight erupts, and there's people coming at us. So we're in a little bit of a tiff there, and we finally get out. And as we're moving, we're going to go into what I believe our kill zone is going to be. The enemy already had an ambush set up. So as we move out, and it's just me and our 18 Delta, the medic, who there's helmet cam footage. If you Google Chuck Ritter shot, it'll pop up. It's his perspective, but it's me, him, and this other CRD guy, which is a chemical guy, and the rest are just Afghans. So we go around this corner. I'm always in the front in that kind of thing because it'd be stupid to have the medic in the front, right? As we go into this little L-shaped courtyard, all these trees, huge ambush. This Afghan that's in front of me, he gets shot. His fingers get shot off. He gets shot through the leg. And I'm right at this corner, so I'm returning fire, but there's so much fire coming, I just duck back a little bit. All the other Afghans leave. So it's just me up in this corner. And every time I'm trying to engage, it's just a massive amount of fire coming in. Multiple machine guns. So I can see this guy, but I can't get to him. And it happened to be at the perfect time to where most of our aircraft were off station refueling. We had a couple ISR platforms and we had 2 Apaches on station. Everything else was off station. Like, shit, we let's get some Afghans back up here, right? So I can't just go out there and fight
Rambo style
this thing, right? So, man, we need to get some fire down. I was like, they want to use rockets because it's too close. Like, we need at least some 30 mic, which, well within the minimum safe distance, at least on the periphery, at least to keep these guys' heads down so we can grab this Afghan. And so I got the Afghans back. Like, where's the fire? You can hear the medic. He's like, hey, Alpha, where's the fire, right? It turns out that, the first bird came in, tried to do a gun run, his gun wouldn't work. In the video, like one of the videos, like we're talking about the gun's bent. That's just code word for the gun's inoperable. It doesn't mean the actual thing's bent. So both weapon systems didn't work. I'm like, okay, well, we have to get this guy. If the Taliban get this Afghan, it's mission over. So it's worth the risk, right? And with combat, it's always about finding acceptable risk. If you just try to mitigate risk, you're always going to find yourself in a stalemate. You're just not going to win, right? There's no sports that you watch where a team's going to win by just mitigating risk. No, you find acceptable risk. What's worth it so you can actually win the game.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that most times teams lose if that's their goal is play it conservative. That they end up just getting outdone at the end.
Anything like that. I could argue that one of the reasons why Afghanistan ended the way it is because we're just trying to always mitigate risk and what's acceptable. Like, winning takes some risk. You just got to figure out what that is. So the acceptable risk was we have to get this Afghan, and the reality is we're going to get fucked up in the process. Like, there's no way we're going to fight out in this. I mean, this is like a 15-meter engagement, and we're going to come out unscathed. It's just not going to happen. So got enough Afghans back, talked to the Deltas, like, hey, man, like, CCP here, right? Be prepared to receive some casualties, and we're going to go do this. So it's me, the Afghan team leader, and 2 other Afghans that fight out into this kill zone. And as we go around this corner, there's 2 guys. There's multiple machine guns. At least 2 machine guns, probably like 3. But then there's multiple other people like in there. It's a pretty sizable force that are bounding textbook style, like very close, probably from me to a little bit past you. End up shooting those 2, and see this Afghan, and we're in this pretty nasty firefight with these people. And we think we kill most of them. We killed 1 machine gun that was kind of to my 1 o'clock. And there's one over here somewhere, and there was a bunch of fire coming from the middle. And we think we've attrited these guys down because luckily they weren't the greatest shots, or we would have been toast. And start dragging this Afghan, and this machine gun started shooting. So I throw a grenade. I think I've killed him with this grenade because he's not shooting anymore. I shot the area. Start dragging the Afghan again. Well, this machine gun opens up on the Afghan platoon leader. So I go to engage this guy, and I'm off. I'm shooting a little bit to the left of where I think he's at. So he transitions to me, and then his first round strikes me in the leg, like right here on the side, and it knocks me forward into like this, like I'm like a Superman position. And there's this shit ditch where it's where the sewer comes down here. Ended up going into that, but as I'm falling, a round hit me on my upper back here, the shoulder PKM round, and it hit the bone, broke through the artery and the brachial nerve complex, and then lodged in my lower back, and then another one nicked my butt cheek. But I fell in the shit ditch, and if you watch the video, there's poop in my face.
Which is good for a gun wound infection.
Which is great, yeah. But luckily, since I found out the rest of his rounds, he's got a 100-round belt, like hit the wall around me. So I'm like, okay, he's got to reload, and I know where he's at now. I'm going to kill this guy. So I got up, and when I went to go bring my arm up, I physically, when I went to go bring it up, it was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And I physically was like, I'm going to force my arm up even through this. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get my arm to actually lift. Like, well, that's bad. So I tried to grab this Afghan with this hand, and the way this little wall, I just couldn't drag him. I was like, this guy, it's a pretty bad hit. Gotta get around. This other Afghan came back. I'm like, grab this dude. Let's get out of here while this dude's reloading. And then if you look at the helmet cam footage, you can see me come around the corner, and Dan's like, are you good? I'm like, I'm hit, and take it off, and then hitting the back, and I actually bled out from that, and I crashed on the operating table a couple times when I got to the military hospital there.
So you took 3 PKM rounds? The one in the leg didn't immobilize your ability to walk?
Oh, it's still jacked up. My knee hurts to this day.
On the spot, you could still walk on it?
I could still walk on it, yeah. Wow. It wouldn't you? In fact, in the video, you can see hey, Dan, I think I'm hitting the leg. He's like, I can't find it. And when we got back to the CCP, we had an Air Force PJ there too. And then they were like, no, it just didn't bleed that much at first. It did a lot of damage to the tendons, and actually jacked up my knee quite a bit. But just it looked like a very superficial wound.
Was it through and through?
Yeah, it didn't go in very far. It's the kinetic energy is what really did all the damage there.
Wow. Dude, that's fucking intense, man. A few questions, I guess. When you were first alerted that this massive force is coming up on your south, were you not able, whether it's ROE-wise or there weren't guns available, to call in air at that point?
No, we'd hit them with a Hellfire, but you couldn't see them. You didn't know where they were. You'd catch a glimpse of them when they were, kind of popped in an area where you could see them. So it's just a matter of you didn't have visibility, right? So with a row, you can't just hit them. And luckily, it was right when we had the first pressurized AC-130s. We had whatever the model was that had the 30 mic and the Griffins. I think they're the ones that saw them before they went off station, or maybe it was an ISR platform. But it's just one of those things you couldn't keep up. You knew that they were somewhere down here, but you didn't know where they were. That's why we didn't know that they were set up in an ambush right there.
Yeah, man. When you initially got hit, was the adrenaline at a point where you didn't feel a lot of pain other than just trying to move your arm when it wouldn't work?
Oh, it felt all the pain. In fact, if you watch the helmet cam footage, and when I'm just sitting there kind of moving, and I'm like, man, hit me with some morphine, right? Because we would take, and 5 milligrams of morphine is not going to do much damage. It doesn't do anything. I'm convinced it doesn't do anything for the pain. But yeah, it redefined my definition of pain, actually.
Wow.
I knew it was bad. I have a high pain tolerance anyway, and I was like, man, this is a pretty bad hit. Yeah.
Brutal.
And they hit me with Hexton. They don't use it anymore. Hexton IV you can give, and it forces all your fluid into your veins so your blood pressure stays up. So when I got to the hospital, my blood pressure was stable, but I didn't have my SpO2 was through the floor, and I kept crashing. They couldn't figure out why. It's one of the reasons why I don't use Hexton anymore. They didn't pump me full 13 units of blood there. It took 3 days to get me stable enough blood cell count-wise to get me to Germany. But they had to do 2 surgeries. And when I talked to you before, the first one, they didn't want to put me under because they couldn't figure out why I was crashing. They knew they had fixed the artery. So they gave me ketamine, right, dissociate. But they gave me enough to where I was immobile, but I could feel the surgery. And they could tell I was in pain. They're like, I don't know why he's in pain. He's obviously in pain, but we got to close this artery. Let's just do the surgery. So they closed the artery, ended up popping back open about 8 hours after I woke up from that. And I woke up, I was like, hey, something's wrong. They're like, no, it's just, and I was like, no, something is wrong. So I had to go back in there and fix it again.
Did they put you under with ketamine again?
No, they put me completely under that time because I was fairly stable.
So, what level of consciousness were you at when you could feel the pain but were immobile?
So I couldn't move. I could hear, and I could feel pain.
How long did that take?
Oh, they were in there for about an hour and a half, it felt like. It felt like forever.
Yeah, you could feel all of it?
I felt like it, yeah. I felt like I could feel all of it.
Fuck, man.
It felt like somebody was just stabbing me back there the whole time, and I could hear what they were saying and what they were doing.
When you woke up and could move enough to talk, Did you tell them that?
Yeah, I was like, and that's when they told me, like, yeah, we could tell you were in pain. We could tell that.
So why wouldn't they give you more or put you all the way under?
Well, they didn't know how much morphine I'd have already. They didn't know. I had a fentanyl lollipop, and they couldn't figure out why. They couldn't figure out what was crashing, so they didn't want to affect the blood pressure, I guess, by putting me completely under with a general anesthetic.
Did the fentanyl pop do anything? Not really.
I just don't think my body really responds to opioids very well.
Yeah.
So I don't think it really does much for pain unless I take a megaton of them, and then I won't be able to poop for 2 months. So.
Yeah. Well, shit, that or it will kill you. You got to take so much to where it stops your heart. When you got hit and I guess just getting out of that environment, how did they evacuate you from being right on the front line that way? Like, how did they get you out of there?
That was interesting. It took them a long time. So the initial plan was Pedro was going to come in and they were going to hoist me out. And my team leader at the time, a guy named Mike Salazar, amazing individual. One of his stories, he's like, I'd never seen you stress out before or have any kind of fear until that moment. And they had me in this sked kill, all set up, ready for hoist. That's really what saved me, because I kept the pressure on the back, and I'm sitting there with my fentanyl lollipop. And he said, I reached up. I'm like, can't hoist me out of here. I will die on that. I can't die on the end of this rope. The bird's going to get shot up. There's no way with this firefight that he's going to get in there. And sure enough, the bird coming in got shot up. So luckily, I didn't even get attempted to get out on a hoist. So they had a plan in HLZ. So they planned an HLZ, which is what we planned for anyway. If we needed it, like, hey, this is where we got to go. And of course, again, it's minimal people for that mission, because again, we had a force ratio where you could have 1 Green Beret per 10 Afghans. And this was, again, one of the things we talked about before, like weird policies. I remember the commander called me. He's like, hey, Chuck, you're only taking 77 people with you. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, that's what I can fit on the bird. He's like, because you guys give me this force ratio. So we only had 7 Green Berets and then a number of other non-Green Berets that didn't count against the force ratio for something. And the reason we had 77 is like, well, when I do the math with the bird weight, like this is what it comes out to. It's like, well, Chuck, if you want to take more people, take more Green Berets. I'm like, that would work if a CH-47 had infinite load capability for this, where we're at, but it doesn't. So with the weight limit I've been given, this is what I got. Unless, are you going to give me another bird? Like, no. I was like, okay, well, this is what we got, right? So, we don't have that many Green Berets. So with 7 Green Berets on the ground, the captain's like, talked to another guy, I won't say his name, but if they could just clone this guy, he's a team sergeant. If they could just clone him, like he's like the perfect Green Beret. He's like everything you'd ever wish you wanted. He's like, Ross, he's like, I need an element to go take this building, and then the rest of us come up there. So it was like Ross, another GB, and Afghans, and the way Salazar tells us, he's like, man, when I told him that, it's like in my head, I was like, I knew I'd probably never see that guy again, because I'm asking him to go do something completely insane, right? But it's necessary. So yeah, they went, firefight all the way up, cleared this compound. He's like, yep, we got it, bring them up. And then as they were bringing me up, all the Afghans left. So it was just my team leader and my medic. And they're fighting through the streets, and the enemy saw that. They came over the radio. They said, hey, man, we can see that the Afghans left. They got this wounded guy. He's like, we're going to snatch them up. So they'd push me through a doorway, come to an alleyway. They'd fight, and they were doing that at one point in time. So we were already smoked by that point. And then the medic's like, I'm so tired, I'm not sure that I can move right now. And the commander's like, Dan, if we don't, we're all going to die. And he's like, you're right. And then, they fought their way up to this HLZ. And yeah, that was wild. And then they had a fight for a long time to clear enough white space to get a bird in, which also got shot up a little bit, and get out. And then they're stuck there almost out of ammo. And then, they're like, well, how are we going to get out of here now, right? Because there's going to be no birds in here. What are we going to do? And they end up coming with this crazy idea that was crazy enough to work. They're like, man, we're going to do the Mogadishu Mile, right? And people aren't familiar with the Mogadishu Mile, or they had to basically, they're in this firefight all night long, and they had to basically run their ass out because they got left. He's like, nobody can come in. Nobody's coming in here because they got all these IEDs set up on the road. There's just a massive force. He's like, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to use the AC-130. We're going to shoot on both sides of the road. Nobody that's here right now is not here to party, so we're going to throw grenades over the compound walls, and we're going to run all the way up this road so fast that they're not going to expect it as we do that. And the Afghan commander was like, and we're going to die. Like, this is suicide. He's like, but this is what we got to do. It makes the most sense. So because they were able to do that, well, as this was happening, the guy that shot me also got on the radio bragging about it, and we had the ability to see where that comes from, right? So AC-130 took that guy out.
That's awesome.
So they did that, and then the chatter was like, man, where are they? And they did have all these IEDs set up that were set up for somebody coming in, right? But because they were so fast, they didn't have a chance to actually. They said as the AC-130 was firing, you just heard people screaming, and that was able to get them up far enough to where they could finally get another HLZ up here and get out.
So you're evacuated at this point?
I was evacuated. So it was hours later. They're they couldn't get any more resupplies, and like, hey man, like if you guys don't find a way out of there, you're going to have to be out there for the night, right? Even with all the air overhead, the way that terrain was, where you couldn't really see, like it didn't matter unless you were calling where you wanted them to shoot. More than likely, the air wasn't going to be able to see the enemy.
Man, that's fucking intense. Is that where the Silver Star came from?
Yeah, that was a Silver Star for fighting out, and we got the Afghan back. And in fact, it was an interesting experience I had a couple weeks ago. I was going to Clark Clinic doing some medical stuff on Bragg, and this guy's like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it ended up being this interpreter that was there. He wasn't working with us. He was working at the hospital, and he was with that wounded Afghan that was on the other side of the compound wall that I was on. We were at the hospital, and he was like, "Yeah." When this guy came to, he's like, "Man, I got to talk to Chuck. And we didn't get a chance to talk to each other. I was in the hospital. But when I came back the next trip, I talked to him. He was still an Afghan commando and still limping around. But
man, so you were in rough shape for several days. They finally get you stabilized enough to get you to Germany. How long did it take before you were able to go back to being deployed?
So in Germany, it was still an open wound, and they had a wound vac on it. And if you look at the pictures, like there's like my whole body's black and blue because I bled out internally, right? So like everything. I remember I was in Germany and I was real high on meds, and I called our warrant officer on the team, black guy. And I'm like, yeah, my junk is darker than yours right now. And it's just this massive wound, and you can actually I'd bled out so much, it created so much pressure that it broke all the muscles apart. So you could actually put your hand like in there, and the muscles just were destroyed. So I get back, I still got this wound back. It took another week for them to do a couple more surgeries and then sew it back together. So I was in the hospital back in the States for about a week, and it was on a weekend, and I'd called all of our sports psychs, our trainers, and our dietitian that I use. They all met me in the hospital room. I was like, here's what we're going to do. And they come with a plan. I'm going to return to combat. On this trip, I'm going to return to combat. No way. The neurosurgeon was like, hey, it's going to take at least a year, right, for you to really regain the use of your arm. And with that much blood loss, that's going to be problematic. Not to mention your leg, right? But they came in, we created a dietary plan. We created like, okay, this is how many times a week the sports psych's can come work with me while we're working with the physical trainer. So I had the last surgery, and 2 days later I was in the gym training with, I think I had 2 drainage tubes sticking out of me. Maybe it was only 1. Training up, and I would go there, and there was a CrossFit gym. I was buddies with the member or the owner, so I'd also go in there and do. I wasn't doing CrossFit obviously, but I would use his gym to do stuff in the evening. And ended up 2 months later, there's a photo of me deadlifting 500 pounds, and I'm back into combat. And I wasn't supposed to go back. I actually got in trouble for that too. I had a few beers and on a lot of pain meds when I still had the tube sticking out of me, and I was talking to the group's CSM. He's like, Chuck, he's like, you need to quit. He's like, you're not coming back here. It's a red line. Nobody's going to let you back in the country. But I was feeling the way I was feeling. I was like, check it out. I was like, unless you put guards at every airport, right, I'm going to take a civilian flight to Germany. I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to just hang out in the town, and I'm going to a little bit of R&R, and then I'm going to hop on a medevac bird that's coming back in the country, and I'm going to link back up with the team. And he's like, no, you're not. And then there's some cussing there. And I was like, well, that's what the fuck I'm going to do, right? And that's exactly what I did end up doing. And when I got there, I was on the tarmac, and they were not happy to see me at all. And they were like, look, you're here. It's obviously a testament to the Thor 3 program, right? Like our recovery program. So that's good. Go back out to the fire base. You just can't go back on a combat mission. Ended up also getting back on a combat mission. The last mission, one of my good friends who runs selection now, his team was ripping out with ours. And I forgot what we put as my name on the con op. Maybe a couple names. I don't know. Something was different to where I was able to go out on that mission. They also weren't happy about that, but
So, how much time transpired rather, from when you got medevaced until you were back in country on a mission?
It's about 2 months. And I probably shouldn't deploy because I didn't have full use of this, like in this motion here.
Yeah.
For probably about 8 months. But I mean, it was good. I could still shoot. I could do everything. But, if it came to the point where we were having to like go over a bunch of walls, I might have been a liability at that point in time. So it probably wouldn't recommend that course of action to anybody. It's probably pretty stupid. But in my mind, I was like, man, I gotta get back for the team. I can't be showing weakness here. Obviously the team would have been fine without me. But in my head, I'm like, no, I gotta go do this.
Yeah. Was it at that point when you're back in country on combat operations, were you still in a ton of pain?
Yeah, that thing hurt for
your arm mostly, or your
leg?
I
mean, even to this day, there's like 20-30% of the muscles that don't work back there. I had a couple years ago to go back and we had to rebuild everything, relocate the bicep tendon. So I think I did that.
That's been done, or it still has?
Yeah, I did that in 2021. Yeah, I just 7 weeks ago I had my 34th and final surgery due to job-related injuries, which is a bilateral hernia repair, and then I got this new hip about 6 months ago. I got this one a year ago, and I got my back fused about 2.5 years ago, and that was all due to the back was due to the bullet lodging in the lower back. I had to get L4 and L5 fused. It just did a lot of damage, and these were due to when I got blown up in 08. It destroyed my hips. They were dead. Left side was already collapsed. So,
is that bullet still in you?
No, they actually took it out in Germany.
Yeah. Do you have it?
No, they wouldn't let me keep it. It'd be cool if they would, but no, we can't let you keep this thing.
Fuck that. They should have let you keep it.
They showed it to me.
Yeah. That's gnarly, man. That's fucking crazy. So 34 surgeries, and you'll probably get like a 10, maybe 20% rating.
Probably. Yeah. So I got shot again the next trip too.
Really?
So, yeah.
So not when you went back, but the following.
Yeah. So the next year.
How did that go down?
So same team, same commando candidate. Went back National Mission Unit again, and we were doing whatever. And they're like, "Hey, the city of Kunduz up top or up in the north, it was about to be overrun. We got to retake the airport, and there was already a fire base up there that had been evacuated. We got to retake that, and then we need to kill all the enemy up here because they're problematic." So, and when I retook the airfield, we go up there, and it was an interesting turn of events because generally, when you're the Afghans are kind of living pretty austere, and we're pretty pampered and living our Western ways. Well, we take over this airfield, and there's this local Afghan unit there. Our commandos are like looking where we're living. They're like, "Hey, we can't live here with you guys. Like, I'm not gonna live like shit like this. Like, you guys are pooping in like these bags, and it's cold. And there's no doors in the rooms. It's like, now we're gonna go here with this Afghan corps that's over here because they have like a nice chow hall and hot showers." We're like, "Oh man, it's totally reversed. We're living like cavemen, and the Afghans are living pretty good." So we'd actually have to go over there to take showers and have hot food or whatnot. But we're doing all these operations, and we're looking up here in this northeastern area. We're going in there, and we're getting some firefights, and it was pretty gnarly. But we weren't finding these massive amounts of people that we're supposed to be finding. So I go down one day, and we're talking to the Afghan Corps S2, and he's got this beautiful map up. Looks like better than anything an American can create, and he's got all the red icons like pretty close to us. And the intel section is like, "Yeah, he's wrong. It's not what it is." But the Afghan commander, the 6th Special Operations commander, is like, "I think this dude knows where the enemy is at." He's like, "So tomorrow, I know the Americans, you guys don't want to have anything to do with it. We're going to take a force out, and we're going to see if they're really there. Okay. We can't stop you. It's your country." So they go out. So now we're without a partner force. Me and my team leader go over to take a shower in the morning, and he's in the shower, and I'm standing there. Our battalion commander, Mike Sullivan, amazing commander. He's like, "Hey, Chuck," he's like, "Man, we'd done a crazy mission 2 nights before where like nobody else wanted to do it, and 160th was even they were supporting something like that's crazy. If we support you guys going in there because there's all this cloud cover. It's like that's the only mission we're doing that night, and we're not going to come get you for 24 hours." So we did that. He's like, "Hey, man," he's like, "You guys are willing to do this other mission?" He's like, "I want you to look at these screens." So we look around. He's like, "There's like a dismounted heavy machine gun, and there's this huge firefight." And I'm like, "Shit, is that what I think it is?" He's like, "Yeah, that's your Afghan company. They're pinned down over here, and this is like crazy." He's like, "The patches are flying." I was like, "But we can't engage because we don't have any Americans there to to, authorize the strikes. He's like, so he's like, we already reinforced them. So there's actually, a company plus there, plus all the cops. He's like, so there's no more partner force here except for these 17 Afghans are still back here. They're here because the commander thought that they were too, dumb and incompetent to go out on this mission. He's like, so we'd like you to take these 17 dudes, load up in these Afghan Mi-17 helicopters in the middle of the day, land, and take charge and get these guys out of there. Man, this sounds real stupid. So like, hold on. So the team leader comes out. I'm like, hey, sir, we got to talk about something. He's like, what's up? So we go in there and rehash the whole thing. And the battalion commander's like, you guys don't have to do it. But if we don't do it, it's probably like, mission failure for the rest of the operation because that's our partner forces doing it. Like, well, man, this sounds real dumb. But we're Green Berets. The acceptable risk is to do it. Let's do it. So we plan it all out and plan out the HLZs. We go. In fact, there's a photo of me in the back of the Mi-17 doing like this. And it was like 7 minutes later when I actually got shot in his hand. So, and then there's a picture of like my hand after I get shot in the hand. But as we're landing, I'm talking to the birds, and it's weird that I'm talking to the birds because the JTAC's sitting next to me, and they're not on the fire is freak. I'm like, well, that's weird. The bird's like, hey, it's telling me that the HLZ's clean. The Afghans are supposed to be right there where the HLZ is. As we start to land, all of a sudden this like light starts coming through the skin of the aircraft from bullets. We're like, well, it didn't seem like the HLZ is clean. I'm looking at my GPS. I'm like, this is the right HLZ. Ramp opens, get out. There's no Afghans, which they said the Afghans are supposed to be there. There's no Afghans. I don't see any Apaches. The Apaches were on the wrong damn HLZ. So, and they're not on the right freak because they're not on the TADs. I'm like, this is not good. All this fire starts coming in, and look over at our 18 Bravo. He's like, Chuck, let's get the fuck out of this open area. So I had to make a decision because there's like a berm. There's a berm about 300 meters in front of us, but that's where all this, there's fortified machine guns like shooting at us from there. Or we can go backwards 500 meters. Shit. The best thing that we could, the best bad decision right now is to actually assault into all these enemies, these machine guns. That's what we did. And right as I got the last 3 to 5 second rush right before this berm, round came in, hit me right, came over this finger, hit the knuckle here, came out the side, blew out like most of at least these bones here. And I was like, man, we got to this berm, and for the first time probably ever, I was actually like really scared in combat to where I shut down for a second. There was so much fire coming in, at least on the berm that I was on. And before I got shot in the hand, it's just all, I was like, man, how am I not getting a shot right now? There's so much fire coming in, and there's so much dirt coming up. And I was trying to like I had a double feed for the first time ever in combat. So I have a double feed. I'm trying to fix it. I'm just bleeding into the chamber. I'm like, fuck. Like, man, I'm the one that advocated for this mission. I planned out this HLZ. I was like, and we're all about to die because I'm a dumbass. Too much arrogance again, right? Like thinking that we could do this. And the JTAC's like freaking out next to me. He's trying to get a hold of the birds. And like, I was like, what are we talking about? Man, hell no. We're unstoppable forces of nature. This is stupid. So I grab the JTAC. I'm like, hey, check it out. I'm talking to the Apaches. I'm going to have them come back to the fires freak. What I need them to do is come in this direction, 30 Mike here, bird 2, do X. I was like, you got it? He's like, yep. I was like, okay. I look over, and this Afghan's like just behind the berm. I'm like, fucking shoot. And then Terp's there. I'm like, what's he doing? He's like, he says, well, they're all shooting at you. So if he gets up and shoot, they're going to start shooting at him. I'm like, engage the damn enemy, right? So I ended up getting control of the situation. It was pretty cool because our guys are at the berm, and they're talking already like, Chuck, we need to assault into him now. I'm like, hey, I get what you're saying, but all we got overhead right now is Apaches. The AC-130 is not even overhead for some reason. It's supposed to be an AC-132. It wasn't there for some reason on time. So let's get the AC-130 on station. Let's get at least some containment fires going. Once the Apaches are doing what they're supposed to be doing, then you can assault forward because we're moving in the wrong direction. Our primary goal right now is to link up with the Afghans, which are back there, and then do the thing. So, but it's cool that, you're having to pull the reins back on the guys. Like, hey, man, I got it. You want to assault into them. Let's wait for a second. Let's have a little bit of patience here. And then, the team leader's all the way down the line too. And he's making his way up. So when he finally got up there, he, took charge of the air aspect and everything. And, it was interesting. I'm sitting there lied to the medic too. I'm like, hey, I don't think it's that bad. But I'm still like bleeding everywhere, and there's a couple photos where it's bleeding everywhere, and he wraps it up, and it didn't stop bleeding the whole damn time we were out there. But we link up with the Afghans. I'm like, hey, like, I'm not gonna get medevaced out, right? They tried to medevac me out. And he called in a bird. I'm like, I got on the set. I'm like, hey, if you send a bird in here right now, it's gonna get shot out of the sky. That's ridiculous, right? I'm good. I'm stable. It's fine. I was like, hey, I think that instead of like taking this package of Afghans and getting out of here, I think if we do that, we're going to get fucked up. We have to clear this village first. So I'll give up my assault element to the next senior guy. I'll take these vehicles, because it was a bunch of armored vehicles, and I'll go up the center, and then one assault element on the left, one assault element on the right. We'll clear this village. And we're like, well, I don't think the SOTA's probably not going to go for that, right? They're probably going to want to medevac you. So I was like, well, let me make the one that makes the call. So we call them up. We don't even ask for permission. Like, hey, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. Again, Mike Sullivan, the battalion commander, is like, Roger, let us know what you need. All right. Like, okay. And that's what we did. So we cleared the village, came back. We airlifted out, and then the Afghans went out by road. 160th came in and got us.
Were you able to still use your hand after it was shot?
No, it was completely immobile. So when you see pictures, like, I'm all bleeding, and then I've got my Beretta, right? My favorite gun of choice, right? So I'm running around my Beretta, and I learned a valuable lesson that day, because generally, we always set your kit up to where, it's ambidextrous, whatever you need to get. For some damn reason that day, I had my cell phone in this pocket, which was blowing up by the Afghans who were like, because it's the Afghan lead NCO came over. He's like, man, I've been trying to call you. I was like, I'm trying to tell you guys not to land there. I'm like, well, that was already too late, right? Like, what the fuck did you guys land there? And then I had all my maps and everything in this pocket, and I couldn't physically get to it with all the kit on, so I couldn't get to my stuff. I was like, well, that was stupid. So then after that, I always kept everything here anyway. So I don't know why for that particular mission I decided to put everything in this pocket, tied down, and then I had my compass over here too for some damn reason, which I usually always kept my compass here. I always kept my products there so I could get to everything. So the one time I didn't do that, I couldn't get to my stuff.
Yeah. I assume that after that you were medevaced out.
Yeah. So it was. Yeah, they medevaced me from there back to Bagram, where they cleaned it up with a surgery, then medevaced me back to Germany. It's cool because one of the nurses on the floor, she'd been there for the other two times. She's like, man, you got to quit being a frequent flyer back here. What are you doing?
I saw you were referred to as a bullet magnet.
Yeah.
Is that like a nickname kind of thing? Or?
Yeah.
How long did that take you out of operational capacity?
That took a long time. Small bones, right? So luckily, all it really you can see now is there's no knuckle there, and the scar goes like from here to down here and whatnot. The guy used cadaver bone. He rebuilt it, and that took forever. It was pinned up for a long time, and really took. It was like 2 years later before I could actually put a barbell in my hands and lift it. But
what about weapons manipulation? How long was it before you could do that?
About a year. It took for pistols maybe a little bit longer. I just had to kind of adapt to it. Now, like, I can touch it and hurt, but like if you touch it or somebody else, or like if I'm banging on something, the nerves just get really super inflamed. But it works.
Even still now.
Yeah, I can deadlift, I can do pull-ups, I can shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still, about 2 or 3 times a week I can't write with it. It just shuts down. I don't have that finite use of it.
Yeah. The super crazy mission that 160th would only go in once basically that night. What was that about?
It was an area where we knew it was like a lot of enemy, but it was cloud cover. You couldn't see, like the ceiling was so low that even Apaches couldn't see. So we're like, oh, that's ridiculous, because usually you're not gonna go in infill unless you have ISR, Apaches, and an AC-130 on station. Generally, for those types of missions, that's the minimum package. Well, nothing could see. So our thing was like, okay, well, we got a mortar. We're going to bring our mortar in. We always brought our mortar with us. We got heavy weapons. I think we'll be fine, right? Like, if we go in here, what we're being asked to do. There was also an Afghan company already co-located here. It's like we can always fall back into them. So yeah, it was really just because there was no assets they could see. So 160th wasn't really. They weren't cool with it. Like, hey man, like we normally don't authorize an info like this at all for anybody. So we'll do one, but we also can't come get you in these conditions.
What was the kind of general concept of ops for that mission?
For that one, so we were going to go into the south of this known position of the enemy and move up and move into contact and then clear them out of this area, which that was really creepy because we linked up with the Afghans and we'd cleared all these other buildings where people said there was, people that we needed to talk to. And so we rounded up those people. As we moved to this part, there's this armored Afghan vehicle, and they got all these rocks against the wheels, and this place is just shot to shit, and there's like mortar fuses everywhere. And it looks something out of, the Predator scene where they get the minigun and they like chop all the... So we look out in front of this, they got these dug-in fighting positions, and that's what the foliage looked like. It looked like, it was just wild. There was like brass freaking everywhere and blood and stuff. And they're like, hey, don't go in there. Like, if you go in there, you guys aren't coming out. We're like, well, that's where the enemy is, right? They're like, yeah, so you got to go in there. So that's where we went, and there was a little bit of a firefight in there, nothing crazy. One of our elements got pinned down for a little while, pretty good amount of Apache fire, and then took care of that, and then exfilling, nothing crazy. We went in there to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish, got the people we were trying to get, and left.
So I guess number of deployment-wise, what number was that, and how many did you do after that?
I think I did 2 after that one. I went back to Afghanistan for a little something. That mission was cool in Kunduz, too, because we're right here on the Tajikistan border, and a couple years before that, I was in Tajikistan working just north of that, working with their forces that were interdicting the drugs coming up the Opium Highway right there. So I just thought that was always cool that, it was a stone's throw away. Yeah. A couple trips before that in the other country, and then I was right there on that, because that's why the Taliban wanted it, obviously, because that's where they'd take all their opium, they'd come up, and that's how they'd get a lot of it out. Yeah.
But those last 2 deployments, were they as active and as dynamic as the previous ones?
No, the very last one was Syria, and I was a task force sergeant major for that, so it's more like that was just personality stuff, because dealing with multiple teams in multiple countries, and you got 1,200 people are going to be dumb, do stupid stuff. So that's most of my time was dealing with the drama with other entities that we're working with. You know how it is. I mean, you're in software. Nobody can seem to ever get along, and you're just like, we're on the same team here. Yeah. What are we doing? Between the Department of State and the agency and us, and everybody's like, why is there so much friction here? There doesn't need to be this much friction. So.
Obviously, there was hundreds of combat operation missions that you went on over the course of your career. Were there ever times in any of the operational theaters that you were in where you found yourself fighting enemies that surprised you at how good they were or competent, or that even from a aftermath SSE standpoint, that you realized that they were either foreign fighters or they were Chechenian, or any weird elements like that you guys ran into in your time there?
All the time. I started on Iraq, really, where we'd go on these targets and just some of the IDs you'd find or whatever, man, this is some really ingenious stuff, or their tenacity on the battlefield. I always get pissed online, oh, you guys lost to a bunch of goat herders. Some damn good fighters, man. I got a lot of respect for most of the people that we were fighting. I mean, a lot of balls, right? You're still gonna come and face me, knowing all this stuff's overhead, knowing we got all this ass, and you're still gonna have the courage to come and face me on the battlefield. They respect, props. That's wild. I'd say 99% of Americans wouldn't have that kind of tenacity and whatnot. Not all of them. Some people are just out there trying to make a living, trying to make a buck. But some of you really dedicated, fighters that are really and they're pretty good at what they do. Yeah. And the way they can maneuver, and I think underestimating, and ego gets the best of us a lot of times. We're just gonna go squash. That'll get you in trouble. Right? It got me in trouble plenty of times where you're just a little overconfident, and then I say the one time in combat I was scared when I came up to the thing. That's always terrifying. When people are actively trying to kill you, close. It's just being able to move through the fear and having that mindset. Even going around that corner to Gob, you got to put yourself in that mindset. It's just kind of even when you're doing close quarters battle. Okay, I'm about to go through this threshold. Once I'm there, there's no stopping. I have to. There's 2 options here. Either I'm going to kill everything in here that needs to be killed, or I'm going to die in the process, because I can't stop here. And that's just once you're once you're in that mental state, then it's a matter of falling back on your training, the automation of you've trained so much on these things that certain things are automated so you can think about what's going on next. But every time like you're doing that and you have a second to look what's going on, you're like, man, these guys are pretty good.
Right. Was there a most unusual or surprising region or place that you found IDs from or fighters that you weren't expecting?
Helmand province was just how many IEDs and the devices they were using were so like, I mean, they were using these spider devices to where, if something ran over it, it would blow it up. But also if you went to uncover it and the light hit it, it would blow up. So it was designed to, even if you were out there like trying to mitigate them, and then they could also be command detonated. So they were, those are coming from Iran at the time, I believe. But yeah, those just how they were able to kind of like figure out where you're going to go, and even out in the desert or wherever you went, it seemed like you were going to hit something and they were going to do a follow-on attack, and it's just intelligent. It was like, wow, that's props on those guys.
Yeah. I apologize. I mean, I'm certainly curious about IEDs. I meant IDs, like the identifications of guys. Were there any?
Oh, foreign. Like I never personally saw any foreign fighters specifically, right? But you knew like they're getting this stuff from Iran or wherever they're getting it from, right? I was never in a situation where I'm sure in Tagab there was foreign fighters within that element because they were just very good at what they were doing. But I personally, like, Iraq's a little bit different. Those were people from all over the place. That wasn't just. I would say we probably weren't fighting Iraqis in Talafar. We're fighting, all these other fanatics that obviously didn't give a shit about how much firepower we had.
But to me, that kind of brings up a broader question of specifically Iraq. I would kind of move Afghanistan to a different discussion, but Iraq in particular, having been there and knowing that, and I'll preface it with it's easy to look back now and say we should have done this or this was a mistake or whatever, but generally speaking, do you look at the Iraq war as a mistake?
It's always an interesting question, right? People are like, well, you guys lost this. Like, I would say like Iraq 1 and 2 are both, the conventional side were just clear displays of how, in the very first one, air-land battle, and how that air-land battle doctrine evolved over time into just being able to take and use every asset that we have and put it on the battlefield in such a way to where we just overwhelm a force, right? But our objective in Iraq was to ensure that the Iraqi military wasn't a threat anymore in the region and dispose of Saddam Hussein, which we did, right? But I think it was based on some false pretenses, right? Like, looking back, like, was it really necessary? For me, I'm a big proponent. Like, we don't need to apply Western fundamentals everywhere. Like, maybe some of these places need some dictators like that, right? Like,
well, yeah, I think that's kind of I mean, that is really the premise of the question. Is like from a foreign policy standpoint, from the executive branch of the government, was it a mistake in that prior to us overthrowing Saddam and dismantling the Iraqi conventional military, Iran was far less of a threat, I would say, especially regionally, but even globally. Is that when you look at the amount of influence and impact that Iran had on our operations in Iraq, and then now if you look at like the last 20-ish years, the entire region, especially Hezbollah and Hamas in the Palestine region, I think are...
Even the rise of ISIS, right?
Yeah, so like it's kind of you cut one head of the snake off and 3 more pop up. I mean, as big of a dick and a problem as Saddam was, he was at a minimum, keeping a lid on the extremism coming out of Iraq, at least how it's affecting, any Western interests by and large. But also he was keeping Iran busy enough, to where they didn't have the capacity in dealing with him and emboldening, supplying, supporting other terrorist factions. I mean, because it's not just Hamas and Hezbollah. You got the Houthis in Yemen. I think at this point, looking in the rearview mirror, which again I know is easy to do, but it would be hard to convince me, at least, that the region is in a better place now, 20 years, 25 years after, having started what we started there, that it's better off now than it was before we ever stepped foot in that both of those countries, especially as it relates to Iran.
You know what's interesting too is when you're in the region, like especially when you spend some time in like Eastern Jordan or those parts of Iraq, and you think that all these Iraqis must have hated Saddam, right? But the amount of Saddam Hussein bumper stickers and people that actually did like Saddam is far higher than I would have ever anticipated. I'm like, man, why are they like? No, they really love Saddam and all these regions. Maybe not all
I think
Iraq.
the Sunnis probably did, but obviously there was a significant enough percentage of the population that liked and supported him to keep him in power. So there's that, but there's also, again, it's just the Iran-Iraq war back in the 80s, was, some may say, a stalemate. I think you could probably argue that Iraq really had the upper hand, but it was time and cost consuming for both countries to a degree with which they didn't really have the bandwidth to go outside of those two countries while they were engaged in decades-long conflict, and by us coming in and kicking that hornet's nest over, I really think that we emboldened Iran to do a lot and far worse things regionally and even globally.
A lot more power base with the Shias, right? Like, I think the biggest mistake we made, like we can debate like whether invasion or not, like the mistake. I mean, it probably wasn't. Going back, like looking at the documents from the CIA and whatnot that was like convince people that it needed to go in. Yeah, you can say, okay, well, they really believe that this is the right thing to do, right? But when we said, hey, no Ba'ath Party members as part of any of these government security apparatus, like that's all that was there that was proficient. So, and then now you've taken this huge population of people, and now they're going to be mad at you. And of course, they're going to resist you now because what are they going to do? They got to survive too. I think that was probably a pretty massive mistake there that led to the majority of the problems that we end up having. As far as I don't know what you think about that.
I agree. I think, but I think it's also you have to be fair in that. When Iraq kicked off, it's on the heels of 9/11, which, we got caught with our pants down, got punched in the mouth, and, the mind frame and mentality of the entire nation, and especially the U.S. government as it relates to the Defense Department, is that never again, so if we have to preemptively go kick people's asses just in the prospect that they might be planning to do something like this, then we're going to do it because this shit isn't happening on our home turf again. So I think it's easy to look back now as, a lot of that sentiment has dissipated and we're not really in that mentality the same way that we were then, and really not even close. But, and I also think that, like with most things, whether it's on the micro level of on the battlefield or the macro level of, sitting in the Oval Office and everywhere in between, is that, you do the best you can with the information you have. And I do truly think that they did that. Was there maybe some confirmation bias, being the son of H.W. Bush, of not finishing business and seeing the aftermath of not going all the way in and seeing it through? Probably. You could also argue or debate, at least bring up with a questioning sense of ask that when you have government officials, a number of them, the Secretary of Defense, the President, and a lot of high-level cabinet folks, as well as freshly retired generals who are now on boards of directors of a lot of these big government contracting companies, whether it's Raytheon, Halliburton, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, whatever. And all of these people have high vested interests in these companies that stand to make a fuckload of money if we go into a multi-decades-long two-front war. I don't think you can just ignore that. So I think there obviously are a lot of components, a lot of intricacies and things that aren't necessarily easy answers. And again, it's a lot easier to sit here now and point out the mistakes. But I do think Iraq generally was a mistake, foreign policy wise, because of all the things that happened. Not just the way that we did it, but I think even just doing it, looking at it now, and that whether you want to call it a Machiavellian approach of saying the end justifies the means, and just looking at the end result and saying, was it worth it? Even if you simplify it or reduce it to that level, I think it's easy to say, I don't think it was. I don't think Iraq is in a better place now than they were, on February of 2003,
Yeah.
But setting Iraq aside, I'm curious, you spent a fair bit of time in Afghanistan and took some serious wounds and lost men that you knew, loved, and trusted. What is your take looking at the Afghan withdrawal? Like, how did that affect you, and what were you thinking when it was going on?
Yes, I actually had a little bit of an online tiff with the former SMA, which some people got pissed off about. A little tiff, yeah. Yeah, they kept saying like, "Well, we couldn't have done it any better." Right? I'm like, man, I can do anything, but I can drink this drink better. Like, I'm fucking human, right? Like, we screw things up all the time. We're immensely fallible and do stupid shit. Like, it's such a tone deaf thing to say. And as somebody who fought most of the war there, right, and lost a lot of friends there. In fact, that medic I told you that drugged me out of the RG-33, he died a couple years later. He was a team sergeant on the team, in the lead in ambush, and he got killed, right? And a number of people that got killed, buried a lot more. So this online tip, when we could have done a lot. We screwed up a lot of stuff in Afghanistan. That's fine, but we made a lot of mistakes that we made in the Vietnam War and other stuff. And I think that with Iraq and with Afghanistan, I think that we have a lot of institutional hubris, which doesn't allow for us to learn because we don't want to admit publicly that we screwed things up. We're humans, man. It's okay. Like, you can screw. Every morning when I wake up, I'm a human. Like, I know that I'm going to be wrong somewhere. Where's it at? It's probably going to take somebody else to tell me. Yeah, my ego at first seemed like, screw this dude. But then I'm like, okay, no, he's right. Like, we can do that institutionally too with places like Afghanistan. So, I mean, again, I bled and fought there under Democrats, under Republicans. I don't give a shit about that. But I think that we probably need to sit down and from the Iraq War and take all those lessons learned and actually apply them and just be honest with, like, instead of fighting against it and say like, oh, we could have, like, the withdrawal is one thing, right? But again, like, people say people kept saying, well, the Afghans want it more than us. Like, we built this corrupt government for them. Like, again, Western ideals and Western solutions probably aren't the answer everywhere, and they aren't, because that's a tribal, clan-based type of society. And we're trying to do stupid shit with them, like, hey, we're not going to fund your military this year unless you absolutely let women in the military. Like, okay, that's something that we believe in, but again, it's not something that they're ever going to embrace in culture. Trying to, like, impose these Western ideals onto other nations is stupid, right? Maybe you want them to move towards this, but it took us hundreds of years to get there. Maybe they'll evolve to that. Maybe they won't, right? But I think oftentimes, instead of using those organic indigenous solutions, which don't match what we want, we gotta apply this Western ideal, right? I think that's where we screwed up in Afghanistan. So, was it worth it? I mean, I don't know if obviously it ended the way it ended, right? It's back to where it was. I mean, would I do it again? Sure. Like, I mean, I'm a soldier. I signed up, fully knowing that my profession is going to probably, or very, very highly lead to me either not coming back or coming back, severely wounded. That's just an occupational hazard. If you join the military, I don't care what your MOS is. Like, it's one of the things, like, online, like, people go like, I said, I don't believe in lax standards for non-combat arms. I'm not saying like you got to be this stud or, like, being swole. Physical fitness isn't about being swole. Physical fitness is having, some pretty strong core base, like, metabolic health, like, aerobic capacity. Can you at least, have your body go for amount of time without tiring out? Strength, endurance, like your work capacity. And I think there's just some mental health aspects that go along with just being a more competent, having self-efficacy, even if you're just running a 12-hour shift and a talk all day long for 6 months. That's a brutal schedule, but if you're more physically fit, you're probably more apt to do that without getting stressed out, right? So with that, like, if you're going to sign up for the military, like, combat doesn't give a shit about your MOS or your gender. It cares about competency is going to, like, help you be more survivable. So, I think the PT standards for the Army right now are abysmal, like when it comes to being too low. But all this to say, like, if you're a soldier or you're, whatever, if you're in the military, like we all signed up to fight wars. It's what we're designed for. And Iraq, Afghanistan, I go back to both of them, even if it was the end state's a waste of time, right? We're still in Iraq after being serious, all the stuff going on there. Like, we're still very active there. People don't know, like, all this stuff going on, but still very active in those regions, doing things, in alignment with our national security strategy, which trying to ensure ISIS doesn't become a problem again. Even Africa, man, like if you look at what's going on right now, some of those central states, our political game aside, with like the Chinese coming in there and like, economically, I wrote a paper recently, the whole premise was by 2035, whoever has the keys to these areas in Africa and the resources is probably going to have the keys to pretty strong, economic stance in the world. The amount of Islamic extremism that's just blowing up in these key countries over there right now is concerning, right? And the French aren't there running their campaign anymore to attrit that down. So when does that blow up, and when do we see that over here? Because
I agree. I'm perplexed a little bit by the lack of resistance that it at least seems like China is having, because they're not particularly Muslim friendly. Yet they seem to somehow manage to navigate.
Play the game well.
Yeah,
they're not constrained like we are constrained by all these laws and whatnot. Like one of the sayings in a lot of these African countries, like, well, for money from you guys come with a lecture. China comes with just an airport. Like they'll build us something, right? So economically, like, it's the Belt and Road Initiative, right? So, but it's just smart political gamesmanship on their part of how they're, because resources are finite, man. It's a geopolitical game. Like a lot of people are like, why don't we just worry about here? Like if we just worry about what's in the U.S., like all these other things you need for your smartphones and weapon systems and all these other things, like we do have a lot of oil and other stuff, but like there's a lot of things we don't have, and we got to get those from somewhere. So we have to play that game. Like I'm not too worried about China. Like 30% of our grain imports are from America, right? I mean, I know they're weaning off that. Like in the next couple of years, it's gonna be problematic if they really wean off that. But like, probably starve millions if a war kicked off, right? Like, we're pretty codependent right now on some things. But long-term gamesmanship-wise, if we're really going to play this GPC, like global powers game, are we playing it effectively? I would say we're not, right? Because we get in our own way. I mean, if we just take Africa for example, like we passed, some things years ago that we're just now implementing. Like countries like China can plan it and do it now, and they're not slave to this 4-year cycle like we are. Like they can have a long-term plan and just keep grinding at it, whereas we like to swing this pendulum and undo everything the last president did and all this other bullshit. It's concerned. Same thing with Russia. They can play a long-term game because they got this central dude that plays the game. I mean, I don't think anybody should have been surprised by Ukraine. Like if Putin's been talking about his vision for what he wants Russia to be for many years. Like you got Georgia, right, and everything else that he's done. Like he's done exactly what he said he's going to do, or what his plan is, right? So, I think if we don't up our gamesmanship here pretty soon, like at least when it comes to the long-term economic game, we're going to be behind, right?
Yeah. Having been on active duty through, the last 27 years of our nation's history, there's been quite an ebb and flow politically. Like you said, Democratic and Republican presidents. How big of an impact have you seen with your own eyes within the units that you've been in? How big of a role, if any, from a morale standpoint, a budgeting support standpoint, the Afghan withdrawal, 4 years under Biden, 4 years under Trump, 4 years under Biden, and then now Trump again. Do you see noticeable and significant impacts in the culture, morale, and kind of the goings on within your community impacted by that, or is it relatively isolated?
Think about that for a second. The realities of the lower level, no, it's almost,
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Again, I was the Army right at the end of like the whole Clinton type stuff where like it was, real poor.
Yeah.
But for the most part, especially in the Green Beret community, like I think going back to, I don't think people really realize how busy we are as a military. And right now, for instance, there's more Green Berets deployed across the world, and we're busier than we were during the height of the global war on terror. That's how busy we are. And SEALs, it's no different. MARSOC, same thing. People are just busy doing a lot of different things. I think in our community, though, we didn't see a huge impact, at least as Green Berets, because we are the dirty deeds done dirt cheap, right? I'll give you what I call the pirate theory of special operations, at least Army special operations, right? Because people are like, well, who's better, Navy SEAL or Green Beret? It's like,
we all suck.
Yeah, it's all different missions, right? Like we're just a tool in the SOCOM toolkit, right? And yeah, I could pick up a screwdriver for my toolkit house, and I could hammer and nail it. But it's better if I pick up a hammer and nail it in there, right? It's using the right tool for the right job. So within that, at least we take Army Special Operations. If we open up that SOCOM tool bag, we take Army Special Operations out. We got a couple different entities. I say it's the pirate theory. So the Green Berets, it's like we're on this pirate ship, right? 12 Americans, this crew of maybe 100, 200 people that don't speak your language, that don't really view hygiene the same way we view it, right? They don't really have a concept of toilet paper either. And we're on this ship that's not this top of the line. It's just, it's a pirate ship. It's not that well maintained. And we're sailing towards this objective. We're sailing towards this objective with this crew of indigenous forces. We know we're going to be out at sea for a long time. We got to do this thing. We haven't been given very many resources. We got this rickety boat, and as we're looking over to our left, we see this sleek Navy destroyer come by, like real expensive.
Fucking A.
Right? These young dudes, or not even young, like middle-aged, tan, just jack dudes, like flipping us off, tanning on the deck. They're going into mission. That's your special mission units, right? This is very sleek, very good. They're going to go in and they're going to do their job, and they're going to do it very well because they're very surgical. They're very well trained, the best in the world at what they do. They're going to come back out, and they're going to be flipping us off on the way back, right? And they're going to go reset and do the next thing, right? And they've got a lot of expensive stuff. They're very well trained. They can do what they're going to do better than anybody else in the world. Going by, we see this battleship on our right side, right? And now it's like younger jack dudes, and a lot of them, like hundreds of jack dudes, just flipping us off on the way in. It's your Ranger Regiment, like the most proficient raid force in the world. You want to bring some scunion? You send the Army Rangers in there, and they're going to hit that target, right? So they're going to go in, a ton of firepower, right? A little bit younger force. They're going to smash whatever. And again, they're going to come back and reset on the way back. There's 100 people flipping us off as we're sailing in there, right? And so we're going to go in there, and it's not going to be the sexiest. It's not going to be the most precise, right? SMUs, and they're out there like shooting cockroaches with a laser at 300 meters. We're out there with some chanclas. Like that's how we're hitting the roaches, right? It's very, very low tech, using mostly indigenous means for a longer duration, very low American footprint for a very low cost. And then, when we're done, we'll sail back. And there's probably going to be some stuff on fire as we're coming back. It's not going to be the prettiest thing, but it's going to get done, within those confines. And there's more of us out there, and we're able to have an impact with more people on the ground because we're using the indigenous forces, the indigenous solutions to get to our end state, right? And that's kind of like how we fit in. I would say MARSOC is kind of like the same way we are. They're dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Your normal SEALs are probably very similar, but they are much better in the water. They can do all those things that we can't do when it comes to infill by sub or doing things on a beach or on a rig or on a boat. Like we can't do any of that stuff. And your SMUs they're small, and they're designed to do some very specific things that they do extremely well. And they're very expensive, and they're given the resources and the time to be very good at those things. Whereas if we break it down to another analogy, we're like the Walmart. Green Beret's like the Walmart. Like you go to Walmart because it's a large selection of stuff that's kind of cheap. If you want something like higher price, you go to Ace Hardware, right? That's much lower. Like you don't have as many options, but the options are very good, right? So
maybe SEALs are the target then, if you guys are the Walmart.
Maybe I've always said like Rangers are the target. They're pretty nice. Like SEAL. Maybe what's another targets? I think targets maybe a little bit too nice for SEALs. I don't know. Maybe something.
I think my biggest question is, why is everybody flipping you off on the way by?
It's just infight. That's what we do. Like, who's better? Screw you. Like, how it is. Egos.
Yeah. To me, the caliber of guy, soft, wide, is all pretty similar, I think. And I agree 100%. It's just they're used a little bit, they specialize a little bit differently. I mean, yeah, we all cross-pollinate to a certain extent, specifically probably in the direct action realm, and I think even unit to unit, I mean, even like within a SEAL team, some platoons are going to be better than others just based on how much they've been doing it lately. One of my Iraq platoon, we were in Kuwait about 2.5 months or so before Iraq kicked off. And we knew we were going to be doing the GoPlat mission, so for 2.5 months straight, and this is after, a 1.5-ish workup, doing a lot of it, to begin with. But for 2.5 months, I mean, all day, every day, we did CQC. I mean, just non-fucking stop on rigs, on fucking buildings, on underground bunkers. I mean, like, by the end of that, after doing it 2.5 months with a group that we'd already been together for over 2 years, we were pretty fucking good at it, Were we, the tier 1 level? No. But for a regular SEAL platoon, like, we were a pretty effective fucking, room clearing element, no two ways about it. And when we went to take the GoPlat down, we captured 31 or 36 Iraqi Republican Guard dudes, without them firing a single shot on us, 6 months later, were we at that level? No, and I think that's the difference with the tier 1 guys is they're sharper than that all the time, and they're just constantly doing it at such a high level. But
and they're picking that percentage of people. Like, it's just, I mean, that's like a different level. Like, because people ask me, like, well, why don't you go over to the unit if you get aspirations to do that? Like, think back, like, I've known people, studs, that have passed selection, and didn't make it. They got to the very end of OTC and said, hey, you're not what we're looking for, right? Like, I don't think I'm at that level. Like, I got a lot of friends over there too, and just the way and they're always top of their game, right? Like, that's like a level of commitment. Like, I just don't think I have. Like, that you are a next level human if you're in one of the SMUs. Like, no shit.
Yeah, I am curious on the CAG side. Did you know any guys that went there and made it successfully? That it surprised you that they made it, and guys that surprised you that they didn't?
Yeah. Really, with the guys that didn't, there's been a couple of people that, very, like, just awesome human beings. Like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna go crush it. Either they didn't make selection or they didn't make it through OTC.
Yeah.
As far as guys that made it, no. Like, everybody that I know that made it, like, yeah, it makes sense. There's been a couple of guys I thought, like, maybe their maturity levels wouldn't make it, but now I have friends over there, like, yeah, like, man, you get to a team, like, you're a 6 or a 5 IC, like, man, you don't have to have a radio. Like, you're just gonna do what you're told and be really good at what these things. So the way the unit actually matures people, because I've known people that weren't combat arms that went over there and made it, and I've had people on teams, like, really proficient Green Berets that started out as a mechanic or something that weren't combat arms. But there's somebody that's very adaptable. Like, even our selection, we're looking for people that are intelligent, and really adaptive. That's what you need to be. You need to be able to adapt to anything that you're given in an environment to where you don't have enough resources and figure it out. But I mean, they're the same way. And then, I think for our selection process hasn't changed in forever what we're looking for. Neither has theirs. They haven't changed their selection process in forever, and they're just really looking for that specific individual that's willing to endure and commit themselves and go through, like, hell. It's kind of like what Bud's just going to put you. You're looking for that person that's committed and is going to make it regardless of how shitty it is. And then to have the dedication to train for that too. Like, I remember for SFAS for selection, they're like, well, we're going to take the sit-ups out because too many people are failing that. Like, you don't want those people. And what happened was they did take them out. You know what? Those same people that failed those just failed later in the course, just prolonging it. Because if you know the answers to the test, to even make it through the door, you got to be good at these things. If you're not going to show up with that, why do we want you?
As you kind of got to the twilight part of your career, you're in a leadership role in Syria. Ultimately, you're the Deputy Commandant for the entire JFK Special Warfare Center. What does that?
Well, just the NCO Academy. No, not the whole thing. I was just the NCO Academy Deputy Commandant.
But what does that entail?
For that specific thing, or just near the end? Like, what are you doing?
Well, both, I guess. I mean, like, as your career started to wrap up, two things, I guess. Yeah. What all did that consist of day-to-day wise, and at what point did you decide, okay, I'm done and I'm out?
I'm going to write a book called Don't Become a Sergeant Major, right? So people can read that. And get your people behind the curtain, like, you can't take that back. people ask, what's the best rank? Like E6, E7, man. Minimal levels of responsibility, all the cool stuff, right? Like when you get to E8, E9, like you're gonna put in the, if you're doing your job right, you're gonna put in the hours. Extremely rewarding, extremely stressful. Not so much being the deputy commandant over at the NCO Academy. I asked to go over there because coming out of Syria, my back was jacked up. I was losing use of my legs about twice a year. I happened to go to the emergency room, and I knew I had to have this back surgery. And I had got an epidural going into Syria. About halfway through that wore off. So I was really surviving on like 5 milligrams of Valium once or twice a day, and a lot of work on my back. Pretty painful. So came back and I had my lower back fused and the shoulder fixed. And I was like, okay, well, obviously I can't stay in. Like I can't jump anymore with the back fusion. So I want to retire. I want to retire out of the non-commissioned officer academy, because if the non-commissioned officer academy, every single group's NCOs, if they want to promote to E7, E8, or even when they're moving up through the ranks, that they have to come back there. So it's the one place you can have a positive impact on the entire formation, to include civil affairs and psychological operations. And I also knew too that if I was there, I'd be able to go teach at the officer captain's career course across the street, which I wanted to do, and I did. Incredibly rewarding job, but I was going to be retired 2 years ago. I had this back fusion, and after I had the back fusion, I was feeling really good. I got in really good shape. I was able to dominate a physical fitness test. I was like, man, I bet I can jump again. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to stay in for a little bit. But then I was like, okay, well, my legs start working. Like, what's wrong with my legs? And by a little bit, I was going to stay in for like an extra 7 months past when I wanted to originally retire. Like, I'm not talking like years. Like, I wanted to retire at the 25-year mark. Like, something's wrong with my legs. So went in, we got some MRIs done, and they called me kind of in a panic, like 3 days later, like, hey, concerning, both your legs are, the top of the femurs are dead, avascular necrosis. But what's concerning is the left side is collapsed. So what that means is like you're at a high risk for having an infection and this being like pretty catastrophic. So we need to get this fixed sooner rather than later. So I was like, okay, well, instead of retiring right at the 25-year mark, me and the Army did this together, right? It's not the Army's fault, but we're going to fix this together. I don't want to just get out and be an invalid. Kids like, why don't you just med board? Like, nah, we're going to replace these hips while I'm in the military. So that's what I did. So I had this one done 6 months ago. And then after that, I had this nasty hernia. I was having to push it back in like 12 times a day on this side, a linguinal hernia. But the guy was like, I'm pretty sure you got more in there. So I'm just going to schedule it to where we got like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we went in there and fixing 4 hernias on both sides.
The mesh?
Yeah. It's like a new mesh too. It's like real sticky. So hopefully the chances of it blowing out
do you know what it's made out of?
I don't.
I mean, is it metal or plastic?
No, it's like some other material. I don't know. The new stuff doesn't. They don't even usually have to tack it in there with something, but this is like super sticky, so they put it over it, and so as long as you're not an idiot, like the chances of it actually moving are pretty low. So
yeah. I mean, I have a hernia right now, and I'm still training jiu-jitsu, which it's painful, but it was kind of one of those things where it was small enough to where they said, let's wait.
Is it inguinal?
No, it's like just below my belly button, umbilical or whatever.
Can you have to push it back in
No.
sometimes?
No, it just hurts. It's, like I said, it's not very big. So, I mean, you can feel it, but not push it in. But I wanted to just get it fixed. And they're like, no, we need to wait until it gets bad enough to need to be fixed, which to me didn't make sense at first. I was like,
I just fix it.
Wouldn't it make sense to fix it now? Their response was, for that type of hernia and where it's at and whatever, is that, like, we wouldn't and kind of couldn't use mesh now because it's so small, and we would just stitch it, and there's a much higher incidence of that not working. And so waiting until it gets bad enough, which again kind of does. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not a fucking surgeon, but to me it seems a little weird. But so I'm just
put
kind
the
of
mesh in there and just
I'm just kind of going off of what they're
if
saying.
you got to get done, it's not that bad. Within 7 days after this one, I did my first run. So
and it was fine.
It sucked, but it wasn't fun. But I talked to the surgeon. He's like, no, he's like, you can run. He's like, you're not going to want to.
Yeah, I got you. So it fixed it.
Yeah, so everything's good. But my buddy who got one done about 7 months before I did, maybe a year before I did, his just blew out. So
oh shit.
And he's like the guy I was telling you about. That we could clone him. He's
Yeah.
like just this super like in shape, like smart guy. So that's kind of worrisome. But yeah, back to getting out like. So that's why I'm getting out where I'm getting out, because I timed it 6 months. So the Army does have a policy. If you get a joint replacement, you're not supposed to be able to get out for 6 months, right? Is somebody really checking? Probably not. But put my retirement date, it was almost exactly 6 months post new left hip replacement. Yeah. So
how was that? Was that a motherfucker?
So I got this one done in an Army hospital. They went through the rear for this hip replacement. This one they went into the front. I don't know if, I think the lower back fusion, for that one, it was so bad they went into the side and the back. So I was on a back brace for like 3 months. That recovery sucked. But, I mean, I logged 53 miles of running last month. I'm training up to do the JFK 50-miler race in November. And me and the battalion commander I was telling you about that, help get me shot in the hand. And we plan on taking every military services physical fitness test in December. And really just, I took an ACFT, an Army PT test, 3 days before the first hip replacement. And I didn't score quite as well as I wanted to. I scored like a 542 on it. I just couldn't get my hips to work during the run. But the whole point is like, hey, it doesn't matter what you've been through, especially if you're in the military. You can probably overcome most of it. I'm pretty blessed that I still have the function of all my limbs. But really, like, hey, man, like, I guess the whole point is being a pussy is a choice.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can still get up and go do something, and I think you should. I think motion is lotion, Get up and do something. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to train up for a JFK 50 mile, but get up and go walk, man. Go do something. As long as you keep your body moving, I'm sure, like, if you probably stopped doing jiu-jitsu, like, how bad would your body start hurting?
Oh, it'd be horrible. Yeah, for sure.
It's just a way to...
Yeah. I mean, what's the body in motion stays in motion.
Right, so I think that's the key to success. But, so your booking person, she was like, hey, look, he's not going to ask you this question, so you got to make sure that you ask the question because he wants to ask you this question. Probably your viewers too, like probably, or not probably. He wants to know, talking about the military, why did you choose the military when you obviously could have been a very successful male model, right?
Yeah. That is a burning question.
Right. And I've thought about this a lot, and I don't really have an answer. I don't know. I asked that. I was like, man, I could have been this very successful.
I mean, you could still be. You could
do
do the Silver Fox thing.
I've been trying to get weapons outfitters. They always do like the calendars. It's like the very good looking women with bikinis. I'm like, hey, why don't we do a 12-month Chuck Ritter calendar? Yeah. I'm mimicking their poses, but I'm in different bikinis.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I would buy one.
I mean, like, they're not going to budge. Maybe they see this and they're like, man, that's a really good idea. I think the public wants it.
Yeah. There's no two ways about it. Have your own OnlyFans probably here. But, I do have a note about a smear campaign against you after you fired a Green Beret.
Yeah, that was interesting.
The wife is a crazy bitch.
Yeah.
Can we say that?
Yeah. Man, I don't know if that even describes it. So
what happened?
Yeah, so in Syria, a number of people made some pretty dumb decisions, right? But there was one individual, very talented guy, very good at his job. He just, his ego got in his way a little bit. He started making some pretty dumb decisions. So,
like operationally, or
no, this was like nothing to do with his actual job. Just has to do with women,
liberty risk kind of stuff,
and a couple of, like, threatening people stuff. So there was 3 incidents. On the third incident, I'm like, all right, man, like, you gotta go. So sent him home early from this deployment. Set him down. Got back. I'm like, hey, man, I'm removing you from your team, putting you on the B team, right? And you need to, like, take this as an ego check. Like, your problem is your ego's in the way, and you're not accepting responsibility for this shit. So you're not going to fix yourself. So spend this next year on the B team. Take the hit to your rep. Use it to change your outlook, right? So I ended up going to another battalion, being their S3 sergeant major, and then over to the academy. And I keep getting these phone calls. You're like, hey, man, this guy thinks you're after his career. Like, that's fucking weird. Like, and this happened a lot. Like, this guy thinks like you're like the cause of his problems.
Out to get him. And
this is a really crazy story. So I'll try to keep it truncated because it could go on for a while. But it ended up, I'm going to this bar. So anyway, back up. Like, one of my really good friends works with his brother. His brother's like this smart PhD, like super successful guy. So I met his brother, and we go to this bar, and he's there across the bar, like, staring at me. And this girl comes up to me, and she's like, "You're ruining this dude's life. You should feel bad about all this shit you're doing." I'm like, "Well, okay, well, let's dig into that." Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, well, what am I doing? She's like, "You're doing X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "You're in all these chat groups with people talking smack about him." I'm like, "Look, man, that's absolutely not the case. Like, I've never done that. She's like, well, we got screenshots. I was like, okay, well, show them to me. She's like, I got all these texts and messages with you doing all this stuff. And later I found out she's really good at making fake texts and shit. She wouldn't show them to me. I was like, well, show them to me and we'll discuss it. Like, I don't think this is real. I don't spend my time talking smack about this guy. She ends up leaving. It's like 5 minutes, she's yelling at me. She goes away. Fast forward like 8 months later, like I'm in this article by this guy talking about how like there's all these things going on in Syria and this scandal and like I'm like basically like trying to sleep with this guy's wife and all kinds of stuff. So I was like, what the fuck? And she reached out to me like before that. It's like, hey, I just broke up with this dude. Like I heard like that, and like it was, just like no, he's not all these things, never went after him, blah blah blah. Anyway, like she was like saying he was abusive and all this shit. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm in this it's like a month-long Army investigation, right? And it found it was all bullshit. In fact, one of the reasons why they found it was bullshit because she went into the interview with the IO and got mad and was like, yeah, I had to do what I had to do to ensure like that the guy going after my husband's career like got fucked over, whatever. Well, it turns out, fast forward, right, and I'll keep this truncated. Fast forward, like, all this shit was out there. Like, a month later, I end up in, like, 13 of the tabloids, like the Daily Mail, like, all this shit, like, smearing me. I'm like, what the hell?
Smearing you how? Saying what?
Just the same stuff. Like, I was going for this dude's career, trying to sleep with his wife, and there's, like, this scandal in Syria where we were doing all this stuff or whatever. It kind of alluded to. It wasn't very specific, but basically, headline is, like, Sergeant Major sexting guy's girlfriend or guy's wife or whatever, right? It's like, basically making me look like just trying to screw over this dude and going after his wife. So I was like, what the fuck? So this investigator came to my office at the NCO Academy. He's like, hey, I'm investigating this girl. Just give me her name. I'm like, I don't know who that is. He's like, no. You know her by this other name. That's not her real name. But anyway, she's going after this dude in the unit. What can you give me? Like, so I gave him all the stuff for my investigation. He's like, holy crap, this like girl's like a con artist. Like, this is what she does. Like, I guess. So a month later, I'm in my office and my ops sergeant comes in. He's like, hey man, that crazy girl. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm pretty sure she's trying to scam my tattoo artist because she walked in and it was her and she was going through all these lies. I'm like, what the hell? I was like, and I kept having this feeling like you got to reach out to this dude, this guy. Like, it's like almost like God was telling me, like, hey, man. And I kept telling people, I was like, man, I got this feeling like I have to reach out to this guy. I don't know why.
This is the guy you fired.
Yeah, but every time I try to fight it, like I'm having dreams about it, like, you're going to reach out to this guy. And something happened where somebody texted me something. And so I reach out to this guy and text him. And that's really weird that you did that. He's like, this morning, he's like, man, I'm just on the verge of my sanity. I'm like, he's like, this morning I like pray to any higher power, like, please help me, give me some kind of sign. Like, the last person I ever expected to reach out to me would be Chuck Ritter, right? And then he goes on, he's like, hey, look, he's like, what I'm going to tell you, you're not going to believe. He's like, but when you set me down to fire me, you told me that you were doing it because I needed an ego check. He's like, you were 100% right. He's like, but we need to meet in person for me to tell you this story because you're not going to believe it. He's like, you're not going to believe it when I tell you. So we meet up and sit down. He's like, look, man, like, this girl had me convinced that you were going after my career. She had told me that her father was this ex-7th Special Forces Group Sergeant Major, and he worked at USAJFKSWCS, and he was trying to do all this stuff for me, but this Chuck Ritter was just out to get me. You're doing all this stuff and all this crazy stuff. But what really was happening is she was feeding stuff to the command and then blaming it on me. Like, I was, like, she'd made some fake text between him and his brother and some other stuff and whatever. And she was getting him in trouble and convincing him it was all me. I'm like, man, I've never even really mentioned your name. Like, I've never, like, that's fucking weird. But then it got real crazy. Then he's like, look, man, he's like, she would do all this stuff. Like, she would steal my phone, my ID cards. She would, like, she'd get in an argument, she'd just fall over and then call the cops. She, like, had the cops call on me, like, all the time. But her dad hates her. He was never in the military. So she was making these fake texts and texting him from another number, a phone. Like, she'd been texting him as her dad, like, for a year. And he'd, like, built a relationship with this guy. Yeah, it was just her on, like, another number the whole fucking time. So anyway, he told me all this crazy, I mean, like, some crazy shit. He's like, probably not going to believe me. He's like, but reach out to her ex-husband. So I ended up talking to the husband that she had, like, some kids with. And man, he like told me all this crazy stuff. I'm like, that's freaking crazy stuff. And then like this whole list of like victims, all with the same crazy ass stories, like same shit. Like she would role play her mom or her dad with these fake texts and just manipulating people, and then end up getting them in trouble with the military and then moving on to the next person.
Yeah,
really is the way that went. So anyway, but the interesting part was this original author, the journalist, no doubt that he believed the bullshit, right? No doubt, because when the investigator came to me, he had this notebook of all these things that I'd done. I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, did I black out or something? Like, that's some crazy stuff, right? It wasn't until later I realized she was like a master at just bullshit. But then when it came to light, I'm like, hey man, like you have access, you can FOIA the investigation. Here's the stuff. You can retract it. But then he ended up like actually taking swipes of me later, like talking shit about me online, like in little ways later. So finally I was like, okay, well, litigation's expensive. We could sue him. And I was talking to my lawyer. He's like, the best part, or the law firm, luckily like my actual lawyers married to my old ops sergeant. Another guy came in who was pretty familiar with that type of stuff. He's like, but the best way to do it is just counter articles. Like if we want to go cheap, right? Like, because he's like the reality with libel lawsuits. He's like, he's like, you're going to win, but the reality is you're in the military. Like you can't show a ton of monetary damage. So you might win $1. So you're going to spend all this money for what? He's like, it's going to be a pain in the ass. So, and then this journalist called Julio Rosas wanted to do. Okay, he's like, hey man, I'm interested in doing an article. I was like, hey, don't take my word for it. Here's everything. Do your own investigation. Come up with your own conclusion. So we talked to all these people. We even talked to her, and he wrote this article about how, like, basically I got smeared because he reached out to the original journalist. And if anybody wants to know his name, they can just Google the whole thing. And he wasn't playing nice. He's like, nah, screw that. Like, I was like, you need to talk to it's my lawyers. Like they're the ones telling me not to talk to Chuck and blah blah blah. Because I sent this guy plenty. He was like, look, man, I'm just telling you what I'm going to do. Like, you have a chance to come clean with this if you want to. Like, telling the truth is free. Litigation costs money. I'm obviously going to tell the truth. This article comes out, and then a guy named Anthony Anderson, who runs Guardians of Valor, he's Stolen Valor online. I reached out to him. I was like, hey, man, you're pretty well known in the community. I'm just looking for somebody else to look into this. Don't take my word on it. Here's my entire military record. Here's all these people. Please do your own investigation. So some time he did his own investigation on it, talked to all these people. He's like, holy shit, all these videos of like her doing crazy stuff. And so he reached out to the same author, and he was like, nah, man. He's like, here's you can reach out to my parent company, whatever. And so he comes out with all this stuff online, and I'm on Daily Mail. Daily Mail was like, we're not taking it down unless you like sue us, basically. So ended up gathering this army, like 500,000 people online, and they just went after like all of them, and they ended up taking everything down. And it was funny. So the original journalist tried to sue. He threatened to sue me. Sent me overnight at a FedEx from a pretty powerful law firm in North Carolina. It's like, as you know, our client wrote an article about you, but blah blah blah. Like basically, you need to stop doing this. They FedEx that to me on a Wednesday. On Thursday, his parent company's head legal counsel contacted me. He was like, hey, we've taken it down. Please give it a day to get off Google, but obviously it's bullshit. Like it's down. So he spent that money. A cease and desist letter from that law firm probably cost at least $300. That law firm probably $600. I framed it. I got it on my wall because I figured if you're going to overnight me that's an expensive present. I might as well cherish it, right? And to this day, he hasn't apologized. Now he just says that he didn't write the article. He never wrote one.
That's some Green Beret days of our lives action, huh? Were there ever any legal consequences for the chick?
So no. So I actually gave so she kept getting that soldier and his mom like filing all these police reports, getting arrested and stuff, or it was just bullshit. So I went to court with them, helped them out. I gave the DA like a whole like thumb drive full of stuff, and they're like, "Hey, this is like federal level stuff. Like we can't really." It like goes across like this Georgia and and like other people had hired like private investigators for us. All that stuff was in there, and it's crazy stuff. I'm talking like people from Ranger Regiment. Like when the call came out, like there's all these videos online now you can find of her like doing things to different people. Oh. And it's just crazy stuff. It's like just inside. It's kind of like the same play. It's basically all a scam. Like I was collateral damage in her schemes against this soldier. Yeah, really is what happened. But again, I think it's a good, going through getting shot, but going through being in 13 tabloids, right? So how do you find a win? these situations, right? And for me, like, okay, yeah, this soldier like tried to destroy my career, but I think as leaders we have the responsibility to, even if somebody's a lost cause, because even my chain of command, like, hey, you can't address this, you shouldn't reach out to this guy. I was like, well, for me as a Christian man, I know what Luke says. It says that the parable of the lost sheep, that you got 99 sheep that are saved, you got that one that's lost. It's like, well, the people that are already saved, like it's fine, but it's your responsibility to go and get that lost sheep, right? John goes even further, saying that it's worth the risk, right? Like you must do what you need to do if it's the right thing to do, regardless of the consequences. So, that soldier, he did get in trouble. He lost his special forces tab. He got kicked out of the Army. But he's in a good place right now, right? He's successful. He spent a lot of time with his kids. He's in a good mental place. He's successful in his endeavors. His family's in a good place. So it was still worth it, and I still talk to him occasionally, and his family's doing really well. He's still dealing with all that crap. But a way to take all that and turn into a win, right? And because all that happened, man, I've made like the owner of the Havoc Journal, a guy named Charles Faint. He's a good friend of mine now. Like, I wouldn't have met him if it wasn't for that, right? Because he had his own dealings with this journalist back in the day. And between him and I got linked up with Ayman Kafel, who's now my editor-in-chief at Objective Arete. Through that, now he's taught me how to be a much better writer. So much good has come from it. I don't regret it. I wouldn't go back and undo it.
Just the standard silver lining kind of thing.
Right. So you got to always find a way to take all that, because life's all about dealing with bullshit, right? Life will, if it's not getting shot, or tabloids, like sometimes when it's going too good, I'm like, man, it's going too good. Like something's going to happen. You got to wake up and just embrace the adversity, right? Like I know, like even in the Bible, like the only apostle that didn't die a horrible death was John, right? Everybody else died a horrible death. And I think the whole point there is like, hey man, if you really believe in something, like be willing to struggle for it. But that's just life. Life is going to find ways to kick you in the balls. Life is always looking for a way, like, man, how can I? And you got to accept that and be like, bring it. Like, what's the adversity today? Like, what am I going to have to grind through? And how do I turn that into a win, not just for me, but for others as well, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just an important thing. Like, I wish, if I go back in time, I wish I could view it like that, because I didn't always view it like that, right? We're always like in our own heads, and like, no, man, it's about struggle. It's about adversity. And if you're always just looking to enjoy the end state, you're going to miss out on all the greatness that, like, I mean, even in the mornings when I pray now, man, thank you for the adversity. Thank you for all the BS, because I wouldn't be the person I am right now if it wasn't for all that.
Enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride. And you know what? The ride's going to suck sometimes.
Yeah. It's going to scare the shit out.
It's going to end up with dog teeth in your bones and in your arms, right?
It might. It damn sure might. Objective Arete is it?
Arete. Yeah.
Arete. Tell me about that. What is it, and who is it for?
So about a year ago, a guy named Greg Walker owns Hatchet Brewing Company, and he was a Green Beret officer. He was in the company I grew up in Special Forces. He came up to me and was like, hey, Chuck, he's like, I've been throwing around this concept for a while now. Like, I want to do like some peer mentorship to where it's just people helping each other. But it's something I want to invest some money into, and I want to make it a thing. But I think I really want you involved in it because of all the stuff that you like to do, and I think it's up your alley. Like, okay. So we started talking about it. He's like, I really love like this word arete. And arete is this old Western philosophical, this Greek word, like from the days of Aristotle. You first see like the Iliad and the Odyssey, and it's about virtue ethics. It's about dedicating yourself to being a more virtuous person, but defining that virtue as, okay, yes, you're going to invest in yourself in order to be more valuable so you can have a positive external impact. So I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to invest in me, but that makes me a more valuable human, so I can be better for my family, for my friends, for society. I can have a more positive impact. So anything that I do, yes, I'm going to be better, but it's for an external purpose. Like, okay, well, like, man, how do we do that? So we came up with this concept. Like, okay, well, a couple things. It can never be a grift. It's got to have the sole purpose of just helping people. Let's make it more of a self-development thing. We got all these other people that are offering these services to do all this stuff, selling the secrets to success. We can never sell the secret to success because I don't have it. I'm on my own journey of learning. I'm often wrong and jacked up. How about we embark on this journey and we invite other people to come along on that journey? So we had this instinct, like, okay, we want to run this program. It's about 3 months long, and it's really going to have people doing a lot of self-evaluation and really looking at what they are like, and then coming up with what's your ideal self, and then coming up with the specific goals to get there, like whether it's mental, physical, whatever, So you have a breaking down your own ego, and then being, instead of all these ambiguous goals that people come up with, making very specific goals, but then giving you the tool sets, like let's build the mindset, but they're giving you the tool sets through professionals to get there. Because I'm not the smartest person. I don't claim to be the best leader. What I do have is a vast network of very successful, smart people in their individual industries. If you look at our board of advisors, like it's the head mental performance coach for the Phillies, right? Like Charles Faint, who owns Havoc Journal, Tim Jensen from Grunt Style, like just very successful people that I learned from. So like, okay, let's build this thing out. I was like, okay, well, let's start out. Let's have a podcast because that's right. It's a great way to get information out. Let's have a journal to where we're putting out things that can help people in certain domains. So we do, like, we're trying to protect our IP because we haven't come out with everything. So we do have domains and everything. And I was like, let's get this other guy to be the podcast host. Mike Larry is one of my mentors and author. He's written 2 really badass books on leadership. Well, one on leadership, one on management. And his whole thing is balance, right? So I was like, well, that falls in with our concept of virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is all about balance. Like you have, the most common, I hate it when people use courage, but it's the easiest one for people to conceptualize. Courage is a virtue, like it's extremes. It's recklessness on one side, right? But then it's cowardice on the other. And sometimes you need to go towards this, or maybe you need to go towards cowardice. Like, hey, maybe right now I just need to back up and I'll re-engage this from a different position, right? It's all about balance and finding out, like being that fulcrum. So we just released our 10th episode of the podcast this morning. I produce it. He hosts it. And then our Arete Journal, I think we got 25 articles on there right now with people. It's all in the domains of self-development, mental, physical, financial, spiritual type things that can help the reader really self-evaluate. So our whole goal is, our first program is going to be called the Genesis program, where we're going to take 20 cohorts of 25 people. And then we go through this whole process, and we'll bring in these outside professionals for all these things and really develop those goals. So it's never going to be a thing that makes us rich, but I think that it'll be, if it can help people, it's worth it. I told him, like, hey, in 5 years, if it's helped 300 people, we put $15,000 into it each, and it's bankrupt, I'm fine with that. Or in 5 years, if it's sustaining itself, we got a brick and mortar, we got people running it, and maybe I'm making $25,000 a year off of it, that's success for me too. But it can never be about chasing money. It's just got to be about making a difference. And it's been success. I mean, it's been more successful so far, even though he's obviously an owner of a brewery. He's doing that. Our editor-in-chief, Ayman Kafel, like I talked about, that guy's, look at that guy. He runs his own podcast. He's a police officer. He's on a SWAT team, but he's also a writer. So he takes care of like the editor-in-chief stuff. But we're all busy, but we're also doing this as kind of like a side project just to make a difference. And, we're going to grow it. And probably August, we'll run our first Genesis program, and we'll just run 25-person cohorts after that. And it's going to be, you got to sign a contract like, hey, I'm going to invest time in myself. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to give you the secrets to success because I don't have those. But you're going to probably have to do a lot of reading, a lot of work on yourself, and a lot of, at one point you're going to have to write some things. You're going to have to come up with some stories to talk about things in your past that you really think led you to be who you are now. But let's look at the future too. If you're going to sit on your deathbed and look back, like what are the things that are going to lead to fulfillment, right? Because people confuse success and fulfillment. You can be very successful and not be fulfilled. You can be very successful and be very unhappy, right? And then you can be very poor and also be very fulfilled. So what are the things that fulfill you? Because I know on my deathbed, when I'm looking back, if I'm looking back like, yeah, I made all this money for me and my family, but what else have I done? I'm not going to be fulfilled. But if I can look back and be like, you know what? I at least attempted to make a positive impact on as many people as possible. I did X, Y, and Z. Then that's kind of like where I'm at for fulfillment for me. So we're just trying to find like, what is fulfillment for the person and how do they achieve it specifically? And experts in physical fitness, like mental fitness, we'll bring all them in and learn from them. So it's really selfishly, like we spend a bunch of money on a library. It's a way for us to keep learning selfishly, and then we can share that knowledge with people too.
Oh, that's great, man. I love it. I think it's a great idea, and excited to see where it goes and how you do with it. So
yeah, and we're always looking for people to write, or we're looking for people like to give us input. Like we're open to whatever. So people can check us out on www.objectivearete.com. Our journal's on there. Yep. Links to our podcast. Like help us achieve our goals. Like I don't pretend to know. The more I've lived my life, the more I realize I don't know anything about anything. Right.
Yeah. So. Yep, I hear you there. I'm right there with you. Man, what a fascinating career, and just, I mean, the amount of time that you've spent getting your hands dirty for Uncle Sam and on behalf of this great nation is truly impressive. I can't thank you enough for coming and spending the time telling your story. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
Let's think. I do want to kind of go back to the adversity piece real quick. One of our taglines of the Objective Arete is embrace adversity, but another one is live with purpose, right? So one of the things that I'm always trying to get around in life is to be more specific. My goals, like specificity. I think that we talked about empathy up front, like something you could be better at. Something that I'm always struggling with is being specific. Like, yes, so got the adversity part, but then how do I, when we're transmuting that adversity into something that's a win, I think oftentimes people say like, well, I got a goal of being a better father, or I got a goal of being in shape, right? Okay, specifically, let's break that down for like, what does that mean? Because when it's ambiguous, that could be anything. Like, oh, I want to spend more time being a better father. Like, no, I'm going to dedicate some time this summer to go camping with my kid, or I'm going to spend an hour a week, sitting down with them playing a board game. It's got to be specific, right? And I think that's something that I always struggle with too, because I got ADHD, is that specificity. But I think that that's something that we're missing in society when we got everything's a distraction, your phones, all this stuff, man. Like, be specific in what you want to do. It goes back to that Matthew McConaughey quote of choose who you want to be and then do the work. Put those distractions away and do the work towards those very specific goals that you've set. And on the way there, all that friction that comes, right? You have to have friction for forward motion. Friction creates potential energy, but you're going to have all this other bullshit that tries to stop you from getting there. As you're making your way towards that very specific goal that now you've set, and you're going to just grind and you got to do the work to get there, embrace that adversity because it's going to come. Don't get pissed off by it. Like, okay, this is trying to stop me. I do have to get over it, but also how do I take this and transmute it into a win? Not just for me, but for others as well, right? And if you can look at it like that, I think life, since I've been looking at life like that, it's a lot better, right? There's plenty of stuff I could be mad about. People are like, oh, well, how come you didn't make command sergeant major in the military? It's like, well, I did. I put my stuff in for one board, and I went in there very, very confident and probably arrogant, right? I got 3 Valor awards. I got 3 Purple Hearts. Like, there's no shoe-in. My name was on the list, right? I'm like, okay, well, shit. Let me evaluate it. And I'm talking to the people on the board with the feedback they gave me. I'm like, they're right. If I want to be a command sergeant major, I want to make some changes. But I wasn't prepared to make some changes. So I was okay with not being good enough. I was like, okay, well, I'm not good enough to be that. I'm not in what the Army needs for that. But I'm also okay with that, right? I'm okay with not being good enough right there. So how do I turn that into a win? How do I still have a positive impact on the force, even though I'm not going to be a command sergeant major, right? But if I would have gone back to like the 2010 Chuck Ritter, I probably would have taken it as a serious, that's a serious ego blow, and screw the Army. Because people ask me, well, would you do it all over again? Like, man, I love the Army. I'd do it all over again. I'm not getting out disgruntled. I think that I enjoyed a life of service. I'd do it again. I recommend it to people. I think that the Army's been amazing. You get to do some incredible stuff. And yeah, you can deal with a lot of BS. If you don't know that coming into any service, like you didn't do your homework, right? It comes with, but all the BS that you have to do allows you to do these incredible things where you get to travel across the globe, do things other people will never get to do. I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, man, even on my way to all this combat stuff, man, I got to spend some time in Scotland, Spain, Rome, like all these other countries, right? Oman, like hanging out in Jordan, so yeah, there's a lot of BS that goes along with it. I was in 13 tabloids, all this crap. I got shot a bunch of times. I meant a lot of pain because of it. It was all worth it because I feel like I've taken all the BS and, at least for me, transmuted into wins, right? And then I try to use that to be inspiring to others. Like I post all this stuff online about my runs and recovery because if I can do this with 2 fake hips, a fused back, my hand that's always painful, you can do it too, right? And it's not because I'm some kind of superhuman. I'm not. I train smart. I have intentional goals, intentionality, and I'm going to grind my way to those goals, just doing the work. And I think that's the secret to success. That's all I'm trying to do is inspire other people to do the same damn thing, right?
I love the attitude. I think it's not easy, but it's simple and something that everybody can and should take a page out of that book for sure.
And people are going to twist that, right? People do all the time. People create these caricatures of me all the time in their head, and like, well, Chuck's doing this because he wants to be famous, or this, or the scandal thing. Like, I'm just doing it because this is what I think the right thing to do is, and I'm gonna do my best to have a positive impact on as many people as possible all the time. And it comes to like, Chuck's trying to be an influencer. Like, I'm trying to influence as many people as I can every day in a positive way. And if you find that to be problematic, like, why? You maybe you want to evaluate yourself. You can do the same thing. Like, just you want to be a positive impact, man, like on somebody, on society and people. I think you can be very selfish, and you should be very selfish. But you should be selfish because it makes you a more valuable individual to have an external positive impact. Is the way I look at it.
Amen. I dig it. Chuck Ritter, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. It's been an absolute joy for me to be able to get to know you and hear your story. It's a fascinating one for sure. So I appreciate you coming.
I got these last items for you that are here before I pull them out.
Yeah.
So, Hatchet Brewing Company, they can't ship beer outside the state, unfortunately. But these are cool, and I think they're applicable because this is their death machine. This is actually my favorite beer that they have. It's a Belgian triple. It's pretty strong, but the significance is Death Machine was the very first team that I was on, ODA. It was 394 at the time. Their nickname was Death Machine, so you got a 4-pack of that.
Awesome. We'll crack those open and get fucked up right now then.
Let's do it. American Pilsner, it's American Liberty, right? Which is funny that they made this when Fort Bragg had a competition for the official Fort Liberty beer. Now it's back to Fort Bragg again, right? But I thought, American Liberty, now it's back to Bragg. So, which is got a cool beer. Got some good paratroopers on there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a veteran-owned company, so it's cool. But this one's really cool because Pineland Underground was the podcast I hosted for, or co-hosted for, the Special Warfare Center in school. That's the one that was very successful, very cool podcast. It's still out there. I recommend checking it out. Again, it survived. The QR code on the beer goes to the podcast too. So they made this because Greg was a fan of the podcast. It's made with a special hops. It only comes out on Veterans Day every year. So that's an IPA. So if you like IPAs, it's
awesome. I do actually. For as little as I drink, I do prefer IPAs. I think over.
I like Pineland Underground. Plus, it's very veteran themed.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Beer.
Well, thank you again, man. I appreciate everything. To the listener, I hope you enjoyed Chuck's story. I know I sure did. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.
Who? Got to get the who in there.
Hell yeah. We do have one Patreon question and then just a Patreon exclusive clip if we can knock those out quick.
Do it, man.
Yep. All good, Zach?
Go for it.
Patreon patrons, thank you for the support. I appreciate you guys checking in and providing topics and questions, etc. One question we have from one of our Tier 3 members, Claire. Out of your many deployments, which one do you feel was the most successful from a national security perspective, and which one was the least?
Most successful from a national security perspective. That's an interesting question.
Claire usually has some pretty good questions.
At least one. Yeah, interesting. I would say, I guess, the most successful was Syria because obviously we saw, I don't know if the fall of Syria and the way it ended up can be considered a success. But where we were doing and what we were doing, even the teams that were there didn't have a full picture on what we were doing. They're kind of not very happy with some of the stuff we were doing. But I think on a broader scale, the impacts overall that was having, like, I don't think people understand like how much fighting was going on there against ISIS. I mean, at one point, Ranger Regiment and the Marines and stuff, they were like burning through artillery barrels because they were doing so many fire missions. And,
wow.
And what we were doing and how that corresponded to effects against Iran, right? The stuff that you really can't talk about. It's like that was enduring. It's something that didn't go away. Whereas, everything in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, Iraq. We still have people in Iraq. I can't say that what we're doing there was. We had a lot of effects there. I don't think it had an effect on national security. What we were doing there, but again, standing with the Afghan National Special Forces, right? That endured to the end. So maybe, as far as the least successful, man, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I feel like At the tactical and operational level, and there's always debate, is there really an operational level? I think there is. And we just dominated out there for the most part, right? Not a whole lot of times that I can think where we just really failed at what we were doing at that level. I think most of the failure was really at the upper echelons.
You can pass and say they were all fucking productive if you want.
I mean, I'm trying to think of the least productive one. Maybe Tajikistan. Tajikistan was fun, and I think that we were successful tactically what we're doing, but in the bigger scheme of things, it's probably just pissing into the wind, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, probably that one. I mean, that was a really cool trip.
Yeah.
A lot of hard work, but I learned that their army, like we were going to the bathroom and these weird looking things with dirt. That's what we do to wipe our butts. Like we just throw the dirt up there, get the dirt out, and that's how you do it. Well, I'm not going to try that. Seems like it would lead to a lot of chafing.
And possibly other problems.
I remember one day we're out there training this unit, and this area was a big training area, and all of a sudden all these BMPs and tanks showed up, and these big looking assault fire trucks, and they were doing basically these drills on what to do if there's ever an uprising in the company or in the country. So it starts off where like they got this fake crowd of role players, and they're out there like beating these dudes up and hitting them with these high pressure fire hoses, like knocking people out. And I'm like, holy crap! And then they're training for escalation. So next thing you know, they're like firing all the BMPs and tanks online. I'm like, damn, this is what they're training for in case like there's an uprising. Like that's wild, right?
Yeah.
It's just that was a very interesting trip, but
yeah,
probably the least impactful.
Yeah. That's it for the Patreon exclusive question. Now for, we'll call it a trigger warning clip. I'm curious as to, as somebody who was in the military through the entire COVID experience with the mandatory vaccination and, the COVID-19 refusal, now reinstatement, there's 8,700 involuntary separations. And there's been next to no re-enlistment so far. I'm curious to get your take on that. The offer to bring people back in, should they have to pass, re-enlistment standards or retention standards? Should they receive full back pay? Are they entitled to anything extra?
No, that's a good question. I think that, you still got to be value added, so you still should have to pass the test, right? I think that that's important. Whatever the standards are, like you need to pass that to be on the thing. I'd say, if you were involuntary separated for that, and now we're saying that it's good, like, yeah, why wouldn't you get back pay? In my opinion. Obviously, I was still in, so I got the shot. I don't think, I've had COVID now 4 times, so
it was effective.
Yeah, exactly. And every time COVID is a real thing, and it sucks to have. But I've had it 4 times, so obviously, and I had to get a booster too, right? Because that was required. I don't think it works, right? I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I think that there's a lot of vaccines out there that have changed how we live, but that specific one, if it worked, obviously I wouldn't. And I can't say like, oh, you got it with the symptoms were lessened. Like, no, they weren't. It still sucked. I would say the last time I had it was probably the worst. Luckily with that one, I didn't lose my sense of smell. That was when you're an American, you can't smell bacon that's cooking. Like you feel like, man, I just need to move. This is the most un-American thing I could possibly, do right now. I don't see why. Like, if you went out kicking and screaming for that, maybe I don't know. Like at the time, I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna get the shot. Obviously, I don't give a shit. They put all this other stuff in my body. Like when I got the which one was it that gives the scar? The smallpox, right? Man, that one made me super sick. So I was like, man, I've already been a test bed for so many things.
Yeah. What's one more? Are you surprised that like almost nobody has taken them up on that offer?
No, I think if you were in that boat, you're probably tired of the military anyway.
Yeah.
Which people get tired of the military, right? Like it's not for everybody. Plus, like, there's been points in time in the military. I'm like, I'm getting the hell out. I remember in 2007, I'm like, I'm getting back and I'm getting out. In fact, there's a point where I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go back to the infantry, right? I was so pissed at being how things were going as an SF. I'm gonna go back to the infantry. So No, like why would you? If you feel betrayed by an organization, if that's the way you feel, like why would you come back to it anyway?
Yeah.
Don't. If that trust has already been broken, and I can't say there's been plenty of times in the military where my trust has been broken. I think that a lot of times, like senior leaders need to look in the damn mirror when we're talking about trust issues and all this stuff. We have a tendency to that call to power fallacy. We're like, well, obviously I'm here, so I have the right answers and stuff like. There's a lot of trust issues and other things in the DoD across the board that start at the upper level, right? So let's be honest there too. Instead of always like, well, the problems are down here. Are they? Like, if you have an upper level commander saying, well, man, I have a trust issue. I don't trust my forces to do LISCO. So why is there a trust? Like, what are you doing to ensure that they're where they need to be, right? Like, I wouldn't say that out loud, but now you just said out loud that you don't trust your people. Like, then they're not going to trust you because weird, right? Don't say that out loud. Then go have that conversation with the people. Like, hey man, I'm having this trust issue because you're not doing X, Y, Z type of thing, or just passing the buck, or like, oh, we have a discipline issue. Like, okay, well, I also have a trust issue higher because of things that we see higher. Like, I'll give you an example here. People would be pissed about this. Like, when those allegations and other stuff were going on, like, they told me I was doing some other stuff. I'm like, okay, well, that sounds pretty bad to me. As an E9, I shouldn't be able to get away with it. Like, well, you're lucky that we don't start this investigation or do this. I'm not lucky to be part of a command that doesn't hold their people accountable. So I actually forced them to start another investigation. I mean, like, you guys have said these things. You will investigate it. If I did them, you will hold me accountable because that's what we do, right? And of course, like, obviously that stuff got swept. It's like, where'd the investigation go? Like, because it'll make you look like an idiot, right? But if we're going to say it out loud, let's do it. Let's hold people accountable. Let's do things. But again, we espouse these values, like the Army values. Like, I see, like, okay, well, if you're going to say them, then follow them, right? Because when you don't, people have trust issues, right? People know that you're either going to cover this up or you're going to sweep this under the rug, but then you're going to hold this person accountable for this. Like, you can't be both. You got to just have standards, set them. Same thing with like PT standards. Like, let's quit messing around. Like, a part of me is like, well, standards really dropped. Well, I can say that when I joined the Army in '98, the pass the run was 11:57, right? And then by 1999, it was a 13-minute 2-mile. And now it's like 20 minutes, 22 minutes, right? Now let's have some high standards because the test itself doesn't matter. Like, the test is just a means to the end. And exercise is just a means to an end. Like, you can do whatever you want, but hey, I need people that are aerobically fit, for that metabolic health. Like, they need to have good mitochondrial systems and be able to go for a while, right? I need people to have good work capacity and good strength endurance so they can do some hard stuff all day long and then be able to perform and do more hard stuff just mentally and physically. So yeah, I think that there are some trust issues there. Like, but let's be honest, like, where do they start? Like, they start with these decisions, right? Like, so.
Yep. I wish the rest of our government took that approach.
And being okay, like, with being wrong. Like, you're a human, man. You're a human being. You're gonna be wrong. And if you can't, like, some of the stuff that goes on now, I'm like, man, I really wish there was less cosplay and less trolling and hey, man, if you screw something up, it doesn't matter what side you're on, like Democrat or Republican, like, own it. Fucking move on. Yeah. Right? Just say, hey, man, I screwed that up. Yeah. This is what I'm going to do not to screw up in the future. Now let's go dominate, man. Like,
yep. I agree. I appreciate the perspective and hope you guys enjoyed it. Patrons, thank you for the support, and we'll see you guys next time.